Wondering, the reason why we don't see the crew right now, we saw them pull up to the base of the pad. They have an opportunity for a bio break before they get into the elevator. That's something you can't overlook, important stop you have to make. So we're giving them a chance to do that, and then we will probably hear the official call out that the crew has arrived at the pad at T-minus 2:55. So that's coming up in about 3 minutes or so. And one other thing, Kate, for folks that maybe aren't familiar with the operational timeline for Falcon 9, there's no fuel in the rocket yet, right? That process hasn't started yet. For Crew Dragon, it's a little bit different, but can you explain that process for folks who might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to make sure that the 9 Merlin engines have the best performance possible, we wait as long as we can to begin.
On countdown 1 for timeline. All personnel have arrived at the pad on schedule.
All right, good call there, confirming that we are on schedule. So as I was saying, yeah, we want to make sure that the 9 Merlin engines have the best performance possible, and in order to do that, we use super densified, super chilled liquid oxygen. So the colder you get the liquid oxygen, the more of those oxygen molecules you can pack in. So we get better performance by having more oxidizer, and so we basically wait, in the larger timeline of things, it seems like last minute, but it's around the T-minus 35 minute mark that we will begin that prop loading on first and second stages with liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene, basically.
And Crew Dragon, though, has already been fueled.
Right? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the capsule itself, yeah. Right. So the Dragon capsule use hypergolic fuels that are instantaneously combustible. So that's why they're great for a spacecraft, because you don't need an ignition source. You just put the two together, the fuel and the oxidizer, and they combust. So yeah, those hypergolic fuels were loaded onto the capsule earlier in the week. Actually, it might have been last week. I'm losing track of the days at this point.
I know.
But yeah, that is all done prior to integration. That's all done in an area called Dragonland down the street. And then, yeah, so the capsule then gets integrated onto the trunk, and then we transport that here to 39A, and then we then integrate the trunk and capsule on top of the second stage.
And we had what is called a dry dress rehearsal of this entire process without fueling the rocket. That's why it's called dry dress, because there's no fuel involved. But that happened on Thursday. So I'm mixing up my days like you, Kate.
We all are.
Today's Sunday, right? Yeah. So Thursday there was a dry dress rehearsal where they went through this whole process from.
We all are.
Today's Sunday, right? Yeah. Sorry, it sounds like we were starting to hear a call, so I don't want to step on that. Okay, so to recap, we had a dry dress rehearsal on Thursday where the teams went through the entire process, starting in the suit-up room of suit up right up to the pad. They ingressed Dragon, closed the hatch, and then they simulated a scrub an hour or so before the simulated launch time. So that is the last opportunity. I think, Nicole, during shuttle days, they called it the TCDT.
Yep.
And I can't remember what that stands for.
Terminal countdown test. Yeah.
There you go.
Dry run.
How important is that final opportunity to do that before the real thing?
I think it's really important, and over time we found it was so that we are continuing it now, right? There's something about having the team in that, really in that launch mode. Real vehicle at the pad, shortly before the actual time is going to come to run through these things, and to give the crew an opportunity, like you said, at about an hour before, to run through what it would be like if they needed to scrub, and kind of that final countdown and get to their escape baskets or down to the base of the pad and out of harm's way. So just get your head kind of in the right place.
Yeah. And we actually had a scrub with Bob Benkin and Doug Hurley. The first launch attempt for demo 2 was May 27th. We ended up not going until May 30th. But that first day, scrub happened at all the way down to, it was like T-minus 17 minutes.
Yeah.
And so Falcon 9 was still, was well into the fueling process, and the crew can't egress from the capsule until the
vehicle is offloaded.
Right. Got to offload all that fuel. So hopefully we won't be in a situation like that today, 50-50. We'll see. But here they are. The astronauts have begun to emerge from their bio break. And I'm not sure which pair this is.
I think that might be Victor and Soichi.
You have better eyes than I do, Kate.
I think that might be Shannon. Yeah, I think that's Shannon.
I'm sorry,
on the right.
Shannon, yeah.
Okay, Victor and Shannon. So they are getting inside the elevator.
Oh.
This is the same elevator Nicole's on.
Yes, it is.
So I mentioned before that we have something called the advanced team. And when I learned about this...
Okay, that's Mike and Shannon.
When I learned about the advanced team, they are responsible for, like I said before, making sure the hatch is open, the cabin has communications and lights. They're also responsible for making sure that someone has the elevator keys.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't just get in there.
Yeah.
The devil's in the details.
For sure. Now, when the astronauts ascend here, just as in the olden days, the levels of the tower are not marked 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. They are marked by foot height. So they press the 255-foot button and ride to the top.
Okay, and here's our first look at that level where they come out of the elevator. Now, they're going to make their way around because they have a handful of stairs to climb to get up to the level where the crew access arm is. That's that long suspended walkway. So here they go up the steps.
Got to work for it.
Yeah, right. Well, they've made it this far. What's a couple more steps?
Oh, look how beautiful.
Yeah, right. Well, they've made it this far. What's a couple more steps? It's been a long time since I've had the privilege of being up there and seeing that view up in person, but it is just... words don't do it justice. Yeah. Okay, so here's a view. You can see the NASA worm, and on the far end, that is where the phone is. Nicole, can you talk about the significance of the phone there?
Yeah, and I think they've maintained the same original phone, like the big handset, and it was one last opportunity to, call your family before loading up into the vehicle. And I don't know, I love that NASA and now NASA and SpaceX have maintained these personal touches to the humans that are part of human spaceflight. I think it's really, really important that we do those kinds of things.
And the one other thing that you'll notice are the white arrows pointing towards us on the camera, and that's not just for design. That there's a very those are very it does look cool, but they're very intentional. This will be Victor and Soichi now approaching the pad. So Mike and Shannon got a head start. Victor and Soichi are making their way to the elevator now. I wonder if they're going to stop and
they got it.
Strain, or maybe they've already done that to get a look up.
Here they go.
Or maybe they've already done that to get a look up.
It's kind of like the pre-flight, right? The walk around your vehicle before you get in and fly.
Yeah, I feel like this one carries a little more weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I really want to come up with a name for the move that they have to do when they turn and bend and look back.
Yeah. It's the don't fall backwards move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come up with a name for the move that they have to do when they turn and bend and look back. Yeah. It's the don't fall backwards.
And we're having a lot of fun here. We know the crew is having a blast. There they are.
Again.
I knew they were going to do it.
We're having
a lot of fun here. This is they must have so much adrenaline pumping through them, because when you are getting on top of a rocket, your life is at stake. And that's not something that any of the people involved in this mission from start to finish take for granted or take lightly. The folks who work on this program take that responsibility to heart. And like you said, Nicole, I mean, when you're talking about the relationships with the people in the suit-up room, they have those relationships with people across the NASA and SpaceX teams. They walk the factory floor in Hawthorne, and the people that work this mission, they know the astronauts and they see them as their own family. Here's a look inside the crew access arm from the inside.
I love this shot. You know, when this was being designed, it was definitely a forward-thinking design that we went with. We really wanted it to encapsulate the experience of the next era of spaceflight, really wanting to make it look futuristic, as with the suits and the capsule itself. Very sleek and elegant.
Okay, so here's Victor and Soichi. The last shot inside the access arm was Mike and Shannon. So they're standing now inside the white room. We're going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute, but you can see the side hatch of Dragon open, and that is where they are going to ingress or climb inside in about 13 minutes if things are on schedule. They're signing the wall there. Kate, can you explain what they're doing there with the signatures?
So we just saw Mike's.
The crew has arrived at the white room on schedule.
All right, good core call there. Just notifying everyone that the crew has arrived on time. We now see Shannon adding her signature to the wall. So in keeping with tradition, we painted this room white, and the advanced team, once again, I'll talk about them. Part of their responsibility, also making sure that there's a Sharpie on hand so that crew members can add their names to our signature wall. Bob and Doug did this prior to their flight, and I love that this is really the last thing you do before you get in our spaceship. I just love that there's an opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the list of names grow over time.
It's going to be spectacular to see. Well, you know, if everything goes as planned, we'll have the next group of 4 signing their names there in the spring with Crew 2. You know, if everything goes as planned.
And on Crew 2, one of your crew members will be, you know, Megan MacArthur-Bankin, wife of Bob, who flew DM2.
You know, they are my definition of a power couple, and I'm here. I'm really excited to see what the seat assignments will be, because it'd be really cool if she was sitting in the same position as he was inside the capsule for her mission.
Oh, there's a wave.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool if she was sitting in the same position as he was inside the capsule for her.
This is so exciting for Soichi, and I know he has some extended family who couldn't be here in Florida for the launch, but hopefully they're getting the opportunity to watch from Japan. And I'm trying to think of what time it is there now. It's early Monday morning, so if they set their alarm clocks early enough, they'll have a chance to.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
So I think at this point in time, Victor is making that last family phone call.
And Kate, we started to talk about the arrows, and then hi. I feel like he's watching us.
Well, you know, that's so awesome that he's doing that, because I think we had talked about this once before, where in the white room before, because with shuttle we didn't have that like last meet and greet kind of thing at the O&C before getting in the vehicles. We knew the cameras were there, we knew our families were watching, and we would do like little secret hand signals to our spouses and kids, and they'd know it was coming. You couldn't say anything, but you could do the little love you thing.
Sign language, yeah. But the arrows, I know you can't see them on the screen right now, but we've mentioned them a couple times. Those are for emergency egress. If for any reason the crew had to get out of the capsule, get out of the white room, and get away from the pad in a hurry, that is the arrows that show them go this way, essentially.
And you need something like that because, you know, depending on the situation, you might actually have some smoke or the water deluge system going, and so you tip your head down, you look at the floor, you grab each other and go.
Yeah, and if we were to do a quick exit from the tower, we utilize basically baskets that are on zip lines, and they slide down the wire to safety.
And you can see on your screen the crew beginning the ingress process already. So our timeline has this happening at T-minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. So it looks like they may just be starting that a little bit early. There are, of course, 4 astronauts who have to ingress. So this doesn't happen in an instant. It's a process, but obviously that process has begun. To ingress. So this doesn't happen in an instant.
So we see some of the suit technicians there assisting them to get into their seat, making sure that the boots are able to lock into position on the footrest appropriately, making sure once again that all the zippers are in the right place, and making sure that we're able to do all the checkouts necessary, both in terms of environmental controls, but also communication audio as well.
And I wasn't sure, do we have Mike and Shannon already inside? Okay,
Yeah,
so
they're
Mike and
both in
Shannon
there.
are already inside, and Victor and Soichi have not made their way into the White Room yet. They're finishing up their phone calls. And so again, crew ingress is just a space-like term for getting inside the spacecraft. So Mike Hopkins and Shannon Walker have ingressed Crew Dragon. You can see the bottom of one of their legs inside the open hatch there. And Victor Glover and Soichi Noguchi looks like are now making their way. They're starting to move. They will be walking down the crew access arm. There's the outside of it, so they're making their way down that hallway as we speak, and they'll be stopping in the White Room in just a moment.
You know, it's hard to see in that shot, but I'm very happy to say that we got blue skies and a couple of puffy white clouds working with us. So while it might look a little overcast on the screen, we're pretty happy with what we've got at the moment.
And you can see the little shadows of them moving along through the windows into the White Room. Almost there.
Okay, there they are. So this is, again, a look inside the White Room. It's not a very big space. It's pretty tight, but that's by design. Okay, so while Victor and Soichi are getting a chance to sign their names to the inside of the White Room, we want to recap just a little bit. If you're just joining us, you're watching live coverage of NASA's SpaceX Crew-1 mission, today sending 4 astronauts into orbit on a mission to the International Space Station. NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi are flying on a 6-month mission to the International Space Station. Good afternoon and welcome to Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Marie Lewis, Public Affairs Officer for NASA.
And I'm Kate Tice, Senior Certification Engineer at SpaceX. Happy to be bringing you live coverage of the Crew-1 mission from Kennedy Space Center. Joining us is retired NASA astronaut Nicole Stott, who has flown twice on the shuttle, so pretty exciting to have you here with us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice to be here today with you ladies.
And again, the crew has already arrived at Pad 39A, where a Falcon 9 will lift off from 7:27 p.m. Eastern, and Victor Glover and Soichi Noguchi are standing inside the White Room. Mike Hopkins and Shannon Walker are already inside Crew Dragon.
Yeah, so it looks like we're fitting up the earpieces now and just doing a couple final checks. They have ascended the tall structure next to the rocket, known as the fixed service structure, and they've walked down that futuristic looking corridor known as the crew access arm.
And so now they are about halfway through the process of boarding Dragon, so it looks like possibly a little bit ahead of schedule. Our crew members, they're making their final stop. Again, this is the White Room, and the White Room is this small space at the end of the crew access arm that provides entry into Crew Dragon. And as Kate mentioned earlier, this is the last place the crew will be on Earth before stepping into the spacecraft for their ride to the International Space Station.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, the term White Room it has a little bit of history. It was first used during the NASA Gemini missions, where the room right before entering into the spacecraft was painted white. So we love traditions when we've continued this one by painting ours white as well. Like Marie said, it is a pretty small area, and it has just enough room for the crew and a couple of ground support members to allow them to complete late cargo load at T-minus 24 hours. And then, of course, what we were just witnessing, crew ingress, running a little bit ahead of schedule at T-minus 39 minutes, 2 hours and 39 minutes. And ingress is how we refer to boarding on top of Crew Dragon.
Now, inside the white room where we're looking, there is a movable platform that gets extended out to the capsule, and that helps bridge the gap between the crew access arm and the Dragon side hatch. And this allows for easy entry into the spacecraft. As you might expect, it's environmentally controlled so that the Dragon side hatch can be opened while at the same time keeping dust, dirt, that nasty Florida humidity out of the capsule to make sure it is just in pristine condition for the crew. There is also a large seal that gets inflated and compressed against the capsule to make sure that we can maintain these clean environments.
Yeah, so this is all really exciting to watch. Like I mentioned, you saw them take part in that tradition that we've mentioned a couple of times and it began with our Demo 2 crew of NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. They signed the wall of the room to mark that they are now part of the select few who will have launched after leaving this room. So the white room also has lots of other tools that are utilized in order to open the side hatch and complete crew ingress, as well as allowing them to prepare for any contingency or emergency that might be encountered. So as we're waiting for our last crew member to hop inside Crew Dragon, let's check back in with Jesse and Leah back at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. How's it going over there, Jesse?
Everything is going good. We are so excited watching ingress right now.
Yeah, so as Jesse just mentioned, this is ingress. That means the astronauts are entering the Dragon capsule. That's a spaceflight term, and you'll hear a lot of these space terms in the coming hours and days. Ingress is what we use when crew members are getting into a spacecraft or airlock, and egress means the opposite. They're exiting. But before climbing into the capsule today, the crew completed a foreign object debris check, also known as FOD check. That means they themselves have to be inspected for any substance or debris that isn't supposed to be on them or their suits, which could potentially cause damage to Dragon.
To help protect against debris, the crew has covers on their boots as well as their umbilical port on their suits that need to be removed before they ingress. So they've been doing that. Victor is up next or last, completing that FOD check. And once the FOD check is complete, Mike Hopkins, our commander, first ingressed, and then Shannon Walker, Soichi Noguchi, and now we are waiting for Victor Glover, actually watching him enter the vehicle right now. And they are now getting buckled in and attaching their umbilicals to their suits. The suit techs are there helping if as needed. The umbilicals allow the crew to have comms through their suit, air to help keep them cool, as well as delivers nitrox for suit pressurization. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization.
I love this view inside Crew Dragon, and as you saw, there are 4 seats configured right now, and they're numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when you're looking at the seats. Mike Hopkins is in seat 2, that's the commander's seat, and then Victor Glover will be beside him in seat 3. That for Crew Dragon is the pilot seat. Soichi Noguchi is in seat 1, and Shannon Walker is in seat 4. Now directly in front of them, which you can see here, are 3 displays which they'll use throughout the flight, getting insight into Dragon systems, seeing any alerts or issues with the vehicle, and if required, they can take control and manually fly Dragon.
And coming up, the crew will do a comm check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and then their seats will be rotated into position for launch. But right now, they are finishing getting buckled in and getting their suits connected to those custom seats.
some of those things to listen for when we're doing those comm checks. They'll be doing comm checks through multiple paths to Dragon. They'll do some through TDRS, that's our tracking data and relay satellite system. We also use that for communications with the International Space Station. And then you'll hear ground. That refers to several ground stations around the globe that SpaceX had. And upon liftoff, those ground stations will be able to provide telemetry from Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. There's also about a half a dozen checks to ensure everybody's ready in here. You can see those suit-up crew. I've heard people call them the ninjas before. I think it's a pretty apt name. But they are checking to make sure the suits are ready. They're helping them connect the umbilicals. They're buckling them in. They're also assisting with those leak and comm checks. So they each have a very individual and specific role. And we just stepped through this a couple of days ago for the dry dress. Every single detail, we stepped through it, from buckling up to connecting the umbilicals, even the comm checks. So it's kind of like run 2,
right.
But really day 1.
Little deja vu, but it's all very, very organized. Doing the practice runs helps make sure. This helps make sure that everything goes smoothly. On the day of launch, like today. It looks like almost everybody's all buckled in, just finishing up with Victor. Comm check should occur once everybody's already buckled in, so.
A lot of excitement. Really cool to see 4 crew members. Just saw a wave from Shannon there in that far left seat.
All right, well, let's check in with John Innsbrucker for the latest with the health of both vehicles. What's the update so far, John?
Well, we've got just over 2.5 hours remaining in the countdown for the launch of Falcon 9 with Dragon on the Crew-1 mission to the space station. Right now, the Dragon launch ops team has completed their major activities to prepare the spacecraft for the astronauts. Checkouts of major systems are complete, including the escape system. And as you can see, ingress of the astronauts is well underway, getting Victor strapped in right now. No issues are in work. And right now, we're listening, waiting for comm checks with the crew and the ground coming up here shortly. On the launch vehicle, the Falcon 9 team is located in Firing Room 4 in the Launch Control Center at KSC. They're settling in for final checkouts and propellant loading and launch. They'll be doing comm checks with the crew, and that'll happen at about T-minus 2 hours. Currently, all systems are go on the Falcon 9 launch vehicle. The range continues to report no problems. The weather forecast continues to be acceptable. We're watching the upper altitude rain showers if they're in the trajectory of the vehicle. Also watching thick cloud rule and keeping the fingers crossed. We're also looking at weather around the world. We need to make sure conditions are acceptable if Dragon has to splash down in the Atlantic in case of an escape. And we're also monitoring contingency splashdown locations if the crew had to come back to Earth before docking with the space station. Now, if this were to happen, SpaceX and NASA are coordinating with the U.S. Coast Guard to ensure crew safety upon splashdown. And that includes extra ships and air assets to patrol a 10 nautical mile keep-out zone. This will help mitigate safety concerns for any boaters who are approaching the launch area. As the clock continues to count down, all systems are go at T-minus 2 hours, 31 minutes. And let's head back over to Jesse and Leah, who are also here in Hawthorne, as we wait for the comm checks with the crew.
Thanks, John. Sounds like everything is looking good so far. We're getting really excited here. And the astronauts are still wrapping up, buckling in, and getting their suits connected to their seats.
Definitely ahead of schedule today, though, so that's a good sign. And as we mentioned, we're really standing by for those comm checks with the crew. Some of the people you'll hear talking with the crew during those comm checks are the core, which we've mentioned. That's the crew operations and resources engineer. They're here in Hawthorne. We have a similar position at NASA called the CAPCOM. That's the person who really takes and there's the core right there. That's the person who really takes all of the information that's happening down on the ground and relays it to the crew so it's coming from one location. Mm-hmm. Additionally, there's the LD, that's the launch director. They're down in Florida and they're overseeing all of the countdown operations. The mission director, or the MD, is also here in Hawthorne in mission control, and that's the overall flight lead for SpaceX. So those are some of the people that you will hear speaking with the crew during their comm checks today.
Once they're all finished getting buckled in, those seats will also rotate into launch position. Right now, it does look like they're a little further away from those display panels, but once they rotate backwards, those display panels will be right in front of them and easy to access.
Just under 2.5 hours now, too, before we launch today. As John and I mentioned, weather's still looking good. Just a little bit about the vehicle they're on itself. Crew Dragon and its trunk are about 27 feet tall. That's from the tip of the nose cone to the base of the trunk. Under that nose cone, we have bulkhead thrusters. Those will be used for some of the burns after the crew are already on orbit. And once they launch today, as we mentioned, it's going to take about 27.5 hours until they arrive at their destination on the space station. That allows them to get a little bit of a sleep period, because at some point, obviously, you get a little too tired. We want to make sure our astronauts are cognizant and fully focused on the mission. And so after a really long day today, they're going to get to sleep for about 8 hours tonight before waking up tomorrow, continuing on with the mission, and then docking with the International Space Station.
And again, we are standing by for those comm checks. This is just to make sure that their comm path does work properly before liftoff, making sure that they can hear the core here in Hawthorne.
Just a high-level look at some of the other milestones that will be coming up over these next 2.5 hours. The next big milestone will be the hatch closure. We'll be looking for that around T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. And then at 45 minutes before launch will be the go, no-go for propellant load. So there's not any propellant on the first or second stage of Falcon 9 right now, but they'll begin loading some densified kerosene, and then the oxidizer is some liquid oxygen. That will be loaded onto the Crew Dragon up until just a few minutes before launch, or loaded onto Falcon 9, I should say.
And again, we are still waiting for those comm checks. Looks like the crew is almost done getting all strapped in, their suits connected to their custom seats. Shortly, we will do comm checks as well as have their seats rotated back into launch position.
And that launch position also gives them a really good view of those 3 main displays, which aren't used for them to command the mission. It's really for them to monitor where they're at, monitor how the vehicle is doing. They can take control if need be. However, this is an autonomous vehicle, so after launch today, they should just be along for the ride until we get to docking tomorrow.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. We are ready for comm checks, 1.3 of 4.100.
Copy. Stand by for umbilical comm check. CDR, PLT, MS1, MS2, comm check.
Comm checks here shortly.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon on umbilical. Commander has you loud and clear.
PLT, umbilical, loud and clear.
MS1, umbilical, loud and clear.
MS2, umbilical, loud and clear.
And core, copy, 4 good comm checks, loud and clear. Umbilical comm check complete, stand by for ground station comm check. Dragon, SpaceX, comm check over ground stations.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. Have you loud and clear on ground station.
And core, I've got you loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for TDRS comm check. Dragon, SpaceX, comm check over TDRS.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. Have you loud and clear over TDRS.
Copy, have you loud and clear as well. TDRS comm check complete. Stand by for comm checks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, comm check.
MD, this is Dragon on countdown 1, loud and clear.
Good afternoon, Resilience. Got you loud and clear as well. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
MD, this is Dragon, loud and clear on Dragon to ground.
Copy, loud and clear. Standing by for comm checks with LD.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1, comm check.
LD, this is Dragon on countdown 1. Have you loud and clear.
LD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks over Dragon to ground. LD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
And LD, this is Dragon. Have you loud and clear on Dragon to ground.
LD, loud and clear. Good luck, Resilience crew.
Copy and thank you.
Okay, Resilience, that concludes our launch configuration comm checks. Please report when you are ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
Dragon copies and inward.
And sounds like we just completed comm checks. Sounds like everything is good to go. So we're going to head back over to KSC with Marie.
Thanks, Jesse. We are now getting an up-close look at a full-scale mock-up of Crew Dragon. And Kate, the astronauts are sitting inside a Crew Dragon that's very much like this one. Can you kind of give us a layout of what we're looking at here?
Yeah. So this is an exact replica, a 1-to-1 scale of Crew Dragon. So you can kind of see size-wise the amount of room that our four crew members have to move around. While this isn't the exact training module that they use to train in, as I've mentioned before, our crew trains at SpaceX extensively prior to flight. They use a mock-up similar to this one for things very detailed, such as running procedures inside the capsule, but also something as simple as practicing getting in and out, going through the side hatch, especially in a spacesuit. That could be a little clunky. Nicole, you flew on shuttle twice. I'm sure you had training and modules similar.
We did, and you know what's really exciting for crew members is once you start doing a lot of training in the mock-ups, you know you're close to flying in space. So you really get excited about that. I don't know, I look at this and it's really neat to me to be just up close and personal with a mock-up of the spacecraft. But, I look at it and there's things that are certainly familiar, like a window. Thankfully, there's windows. But what is some of the other stuff we're seeing on here? These silver little ovals, and I know that's the hatch, but what else are we looking at here?
So these are the ports for our Draco thruster system. As I've mentioned before, Dragon is capable of steering itself in space, and that onboard propulsion system is here. These are the Draco thruster ports that are utilized during in-flight and orbit maneuvers. Over here on the side, we have the Super Draco system, which is basically a super-powered high-flow system, and those are only utilized in an abort scenario. So we talked a little bit about escape procedures. Those Super Dracos will not be firing on a nominal day, but they're important to have as they give the crew a path to safety if necessary.
And we just heard the call for seat rotation. So that means that the crew, their seats are being rotated into position for launch. So we are going to send it over to NASA's Daryl Nail. He is at the OSB-2 viewing location with Kennedy Center Director Bob Cabana. Daryl?
Right, thank you, Marie, and thank you for the tour of the Dragon space capsule. And I am here with Bob Cabana, director of the Kennedy Space Center. Thanks for being here, Bob. And this is the Kennedy interview desk, and we are in the shadow of a little bit of cool hardware ourselves, the vehicle assembly building, which looks outstanding.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's got a new, we touched it up a little. We repainted the flag and NASA meatball and the sides of it. We got it all spiffed up for this history-making day.
Excellent.
It's another great day at Kennedy Space Center, America's premier multi-user spaceport. We're making history.
You like to talk about that.
First FAA commercial licensed launch of crew to the International Space Station.
And to that point, why is that important for Kennedy?
Well, it's important because we're trying to establish a commercial economy in low Earth orbit, all right? We want to be one of many customers. So by us flying crews to the International Space Station on an FAA launched licensed flight, it opens up the door for other people to fly up there.
Right.
Other commercial customers. Yeah.
So I saw you down there with the crew getting out, and they were walking out to their cars.
Yeah, they look great. They're excited.
I think I saw you were holding your phone, getting some shots.
I got, I kind of admit I'm a little bit of a space nerd.
Well, hey, listen, I mean, you've been to space 4 times, so you understand what these folks are going through right now. I mean, it's getting real. These seats are articulating up. You can see it moving right now, Bob, as they get into position there. Yep. This must be a moment where it kind of gets real.
Oh, yeah. Once you're strapped in, and wait till they close the hatch, then it's really real.
Is that the moment it clicks?
Yeah, then it's like, okay, we're inside this thing, we're going.
What's the feeling? What kind of goes through your head?
So it depends on different. I mean, on my first flight, what absolutely went through my head was, I don't want to screw this up. I want to make sure I don't make any mistakes. Yeah. I mean, I was really focused on making sure that I did everything absolutely perfect. And you don't know what to expect. First off, no simulator on Earth can prepare you for what it's like to ride a rocket into space. I mean, you practice everything, but man, it just gets up and goes. That acceleration, that force pushing you back in the seat, it's something else. And so not knowing what that's going to be like, there's a little bit of anticipation. When you go a second and third time, then you got a little more idea of what to expect, and you can relax a little bit more. But so there's anticipation of what is this going to be like? What is this going to feel like?
And you would think there's some nerves there, right, just naturally in this moment. But these 4 astronauts, they also ate extremely well. So I hope that the nerves don't get them too much. They ate well because they were at the astronaut crew quarters. You've been hosting them for the past week.
Sure.
And tell me about what they got to eat. Like
anything they wanted.
That's great. On the menu, whatever you want. I heard like New York strip steak, basmati rice.
Yeah, whatever.
There was some dressing thrown in.
Yeah. No, life in crew quarters is good. Yeah. With there's one crew. We used to have a motto in crew quarters: eat till you're sleepy and sleep till it's time you're hungry.
That's a good way to leave. I'm surprised you can get them out there to get on the rocket with that kind of living.
So that's why you don't want to spend too much time in crew quarters. Yeah. No, but we do a great job protecting our astronauts from keeping them healthy. But it's not about. It's just amazing what we do. I would trade places with any one of them in a heartbeat. I'm really proud of these guys, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished as a nation to have this commercial crew program. Kathy Leaders and her team have just done an outstanding job getting Bob and Doug Hurley up there and home safely, paving the way for this first flight under contract with SpaceX.
Yeah.
You know, this is the future, and we want to get Boeing flying too. They're right over here building the CST-100. We got to have them have a successful flight so that we have dissimilar redundancy so that we can get crews to and from the International Space Station.
Their test launch right around the corner next year in 2021. Bob Cabana, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate your insight as always. Bob
Thanks for having me, Daryl.
Flew into space 4 times, folks. So between me and him, we have 4 flights into space. There you go. We'll send it back to you guys. Tahira.
Hey, Daryl, thank you so much. So right now we've got about 300,000 people tuning in across all of our social channels. That's about 100,000 more from when we last checked in. And ladies, I am seeing some great comments coming in online, and I've got a few I want to show you. So this first one is, she says, I've always heard NASA astronauts talk about steak and eggs for breakfast, but this is the first time I've heard of curry rice. Love this. And just a huge thank you to astronaut Soichi for sharing this tradition with us. And let's take a look at another one. So we've got this user saying this is like watching Apollo 11. This will make history, and a private company sending humans to space with a reusable rocket. The future is now. So, and again, Marie, people have been super curious about what the zero gravity indicator is going to be on today's flight. I was wondering if you could maybe give us a hint.
Okay, so I know what it's going to be. Nicole knows. I think Kate might know. We're not allowed to say yet, but I can tell you to keep your eye out. It will make an appearance at some point, but it's a surprise. It's special.
Even
it's
better.
Great.
Have to tune in. So, and ladies, we're hearing about the larger crew size in the capsule today, and I think that's super fun to think about of those at home. So I think we're going to pose the question to the public to see how big is their dream space crew. And we'll make this a poll, and so I'll share the results with you later on in the show. But Nicole, you're the only one up here that's actually been to space and on a few different crew sizes. Do you have a preferred number?
Well, 6 seemed to be the number for me, and I think if I could add my family members on top of that, that would be outstanding.
Oh, I agree. And room for pets.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So, ladies, over the past month, we've also been asking users on social media to show us how they're getting excited for today's launch, and we've received some amazing submissions from around the world. Take a look at these.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
I mean, there you have it. People from around the world are just engaged with this launch.
All right, thanks to Tahira, and thanks to all of you following along. Keep sending us your submissions, how you're watching. We love seeing those. So we had seat rotation and comm checks, and we want to learn a little bit more about the crew before we get into hatch closure. This will be the second space flight.
Dragon, 5.2 of 4.100. We are ready for Dragon hatch closure.
Okay, so we just heard the
I'll
call.
be ready for hatch closure, and we'll keep you posted as that progresses.
Okay, so we heard the call that they're ready for hatch closure. So we're going to pause for just a moment. So if you've been following along, we actually heard the call out and saw seat rotation happen just, I think it was a couple of minutes earlier than we had on our timeline. Okay, so hatch closure is coming up, but in the meantime, we want to learn a little bit more about Crew Dragon Commander Mike Hopkins. He is a U.S. Air Force colonel, and here's a little bit more about the Missouri native who's already logged 166 days in space.
Sitting on the launch pad is definitely a moment that you're always thinking about, right? That's one of the more critical phases of the flight, as you can imagine. You're very focused in, right? It can be a very emotional time. You're kind of pinching yourself because it's hard to believe that you're finally there.
Born in Lebanon, Missouri, he is an Air Force colonel and a flight test engineer. He was selected as an astronaut in 2009. He spent 166 days on the International Space Station, introducing NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins.
You know, it's funny. I mean, a lot of times people think of the dream of being an astronaut as something that a kid would have. And I remember when my wife and I first started dating at the University of Illinois, and I told her that I wanted to be an astronaut. She laughed at me and kind of said, "Are you serious?" But at the same time, she stuck with me throughout the years, and to have that dream come true is pretty amazing. My role on the Crew Dragon itself as part of Crew-1 is the commander of the vehicle. We'll be launching to the International Space Station, and we're going to be doing a long-duration mission, a standard long-duration mission. One of the nice things about being on board the International Space Station is you have a lot of connectivity, believe it or not, with your family. And so I was able to call just about every day. My family means everything to me. It is the most important part of my life. My wife Julie, my son Ryan, my son Lucas, they are just such a huge part of this whole endeavor. You know, without family, it just wouldn't be as meaningful. The partnership that we have right now with SpaceX, it's pretty powerful. They bring a lot to the table. NASA brings a lot to the table. We've got a ton of experience in human spaceflight. When you're out there on a day-to-day basis and you're interacting with their engineers, and you're interacting with their trainers, and you're interacting with the people that are actually building the rockets and building the capsule itself, you really get to establish the relationships, the personal relationships. It's not just about the astronauts that are on board, but it's about the entire team at NASA and SpaceX that it's taken to launch this Crew-1 vehicle, and we couldn't do our job without them.
Seated next to Mike Hopkins is Crew Dragon pilot Victor Glover, who has flown on 40 different types of aircraft for a total of more than 3,000 hours. Helping prepare him for this, piloting his first test flight to space. Here's more about the U.S. Navy commander and California native.
I saw a shuttle launch when I was in elementary school, and I thought I really want to fly that. And that's where it began.
He is a Navy commander, a naval aviator, and a test pilot. He was selected as an astronaut in 2013. This is his first space flight, introducing NASA astronaut Victor Glover.
First and foremost, I'm just grateful to God and to my family. To work and live in space is just a humbling and amazing blessing in and of itself. This is a test pilot's dream.
Flying has been such an important part of my professional life, and I love to do it. 64,000 feet, that's the highest up I've ever been above the ground. And so to get to a point beyond that, that'll be a little special moment. I'm a rookie astronaut. I'm the pilot and going to be learning the ropes from a very experienced crew. Trying to balance that, enjoying and living in the moment, but also managing the responsibilities to make sure that we get to space safely. I'm looking forward to that juxtaposition of emotion, I think.
Tell me about how you ended up here. I think for every astronaut, that's kind of a different story.
Ooh, wow, that goes way back. So high school, athlete, loved being a part of a small high-performing team, wrestling and football. Was fortunate to wrestle in college while pursuing my engineering education. I actually originally wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That's what started my journey in the Navy, and I wound up deciding to go into aviation and learn to fly. The love of flying and being a part of a small, very specialized, high-performing team that gets to do things in really interesting and challenging environments. The astronaut corps is the epitome of that.
This is truly an exciting time for human spaceflight in our nation. And believe me, it's only going to get better as we charge off into the future.
We've been working with our partner SpaceX for years. It's just been amazing to learn about the vehicle and to just spend time getting to know their flight control team and their trainers. It's creating sort of a new culture that is some kind of a balance between the two. The fact that it takes thousands of people all over the world to get us ready, it's humbling and overwhelming, and I want to do my best because I represent them. So thank you for your support and for your love, and know that you're flying with us on Crew-1.
Okay, so while we were in that video, we saw the hatch close. We have not heard the confirmation of the hatch close. We're not expecting that until T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. So we're still almost 10 minutes away from that. But even though the hatch appears to be closed, there's a process to completing this and making sure that it's sealed and there's no leaking. So Kate, can you kind of explain what the crew is doing now during this hatch closure process?
Yeah, for sure. So like Marie said, it's not quite as simple as closing your car door. Of course, they're having to make sure that everything is in place. There will actually be a seal that is inflated to ensure that all of basically that it is watertight. If it's watertight, it'll get to space. So we see the crew, the closeout techs, the suit techs, all there in their numbered uniforms, going through the steps. You can see the tablets in their hands. Those are our electronic procedures, or e-procedures, and they are essentially stepping through each one to make sure that, and giving verbal cues saying that it's complete, we are good, and we're basically just counting through the process step by step, getting closer to launch time, which at this point we're just a mere 2 hours and 3 minutes away from.
Nicole, what was it like when you were sitting inside the space shuttle when that moment when, you know, that last door to the outside closed?
You know, I think it's like all the steps we've been talking along the way. It's another one of those, wow, this could be real today steps. And that is certainly one that makes you think it's going to happen. You're at that point, you know, the closeout crew is getting ready to depart the pad shortly, and you know that you're going to be out there on your own with your crew waiting to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and in seat number 1 today is Crew-1 mission specialist Shannon Walker, who flew previously on the Russian Soyuz to the International Space Station, spending 163 days in space. Here's more on Dr. Walker, who will be the first woman to fly on a commercial orbital spacecraft.
I always wanted to be an astronaut. I just turned 4 when we first landed on the moon. And I have very distinct memory of my parents taking me and my older sister out into the backyard, and the moon was rising over our house, and they pointed up there and said, "We have people there." And even at 4, I thought that just sounded like the best idea ever.
We have been given the scientific knowledge, the technical ability, and the materials to pursue the exploration of the universe. To ignore these great resources would be a corruption of a God-given ability.
I had seen a new class of astronauts that had been hired for the space shuttle, and I was reading in the newspaper what their qualifications were, and just going through some of them, I realized I can do that, and that was a big turning point. I'm Dr. Shannon Walker, NASA astronaut, and I am getting ready to fly on the Crew-1 mission to the International Space Station. Crew-1 is the first operational mission of the Crew Dragon vehicle to the International Space Station. I was not expecting the call to be assigned, and so anytime you get a flight assignment, it's tremendously exciting. I spent 6 months on the station previously in 2010, and I am so looking forward to getting back there and having another 6 months on the space station. There are so many things that you could do on station. What I like about it is every day really is different. You get up and you may be doing a biological experiment one day, you may be doing maintenance on equipment the next day, and then the day following that you'll be doing some sort of experiment in chemistry. What I have found being part of the International Space Station program, and not just Russia, but our colleagues in Japan and Europe and Canada, is that underneath it all, we all have the same goals and we all have the same passions. The Dragon spacecraft represents to me is just a continuing evolution of better computing power that's evolved over the years and different ways that the crew can interact with the spacecraft. SpaceX is a very interesting company. There are so many young people. I always imagine it to be like it was in the early Apollo days at NASA, with so many young engineers so passionate about what they are doing. The important thing is we both have learned from each other, and now we've got a very strong bond on what we want to accomplish and how we need to accomplish it together. I do believe that human spaceflight is an imperative for our planet, and to be a part of that, to keep the progress growing, I find very inspiring.
Crew-1 mission specialist Soichi Noguchi has spent 177 days in space, and this will be his third mission in an orbital spacecraft. Here's more on the first international partner to fly aboard Crew Dragon.
Soichi appears to be a very quiet person, and yet he comes out with some fantastic one-liners.
Soichi is probably the quietest, but he is probably the funniest as well.
Earlier, I used the word dignified to describe him, but his humor is very dry and subtle, but it is extremely witty, and it just makes it that much more funny.
Konnichiwa. My name is Soichi Noguchi. I am Mission Specialist 1 on Crew-1 mission to International Space Station. Well, my mission will be help support commander and the pilot on Crew Dragon. And of course, once I arrive on the space station, I'll be a board engineer and do lots of science and maintenance and spacewalks, robotics, all kinds of work. I'm really fortunate enough to have a good crew member. And obviously, we have a lot of different background, and the diversity definitely gives us a great rigidity to our crew. I wanted to be an astronaut for a long time. High school days, I watched the shuttle launch. I studied aerodynamics and aerospace engineering. When I turned 30, Japanese Space Agency started recruiting another astronaut class. I was fortunate enough to be selected and sent immediately to Johnson Space Center. My first flight was 2005. That was on the Space Shuttle Discovery, STS-114. And the next flight was 2009. That was on the Russian Soyuz. The vehicle is definitely like living creature. All the pipes, all the pipelines are alive. I really remember the morning of the launch day. I arrived at the pad. Hey, this vehicle is alive and waiting to go out.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery, beginning America's new journey to the moon, Mars, and beyond.
I'm really looking forward to go back to that launch day. The Crew-1 is the first operational spaceflight after the certification given by NASA. Important thing is this is brand new, designed from scratch, 21st century spacecraft. And this is a new design. And obviously the SpaceX did a very nice job. The spacecraft of this century is not just for America, but this is an international corporation, and all the other people around the world have a chance to ride on this Crew Dragon. So this is a new era.
Okay, we're looking live now inside the White Room. You can see...
We're discussing that. Negative. We're going to go to pad hatch reopen temporarily.
Okay, so it sounds like they may be reopening the hatch. We're going to listen in to see if we can hear any more chatter about that. Okay, so it sounds like they want to double check a leak check. So we may see that hatch reopen momentarily. Nominally, we would expect right about now to hear a call out for hatch close right at T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes. So we haven't heard that just yet, but we did hear that the teams are looking at reopening the hatch to double check some leaks.
So what I'm hearing is that the closeout team saw a little bit of a pressure drop during those leak checks. So like I mentioned before, it's not like closing a door, right? Or it's not closing the door to your car. The door closes. They check the environments inside the capsule, make sure we're good. Then they perform a leak check again, essentially making sure that the cabin and the door are able to maintain pressure and environments. So something like this, if they have to reopen it, it might just be they have to reposition a seal. So we're considered a minor issue at the moment, but it might be as simple as allowing us to open the hatch, check the seals and the latch mechanism, and then able to reclose it.
Okay, we're going to go over to John Insprucker in Hawthorne. He's been listening to some more details. John, can you give us an update on what's going on now?
Yeah, Marie, I've been listening into the Dragon nets in addition to Falcon 9. Right now you can see on the screen the crew inside Dragon. Everything is safe at the launch pad. We have not gotten into propellant load. What we were doing is our standard procedures. We did communications checks that you heard a while back. They checked the environmental. Hey, the temperature was just right for the crew inside. And then we command to close the hatch. The team then locks it down. And we run a leak check just to make sure that it is leak tight. We're running that leak check and they saw a little bit of a drop in pressure. So what you're seeing on the screen right now from the outside of the capsule on the left, the SpaceX ingress team in the access arm in the White Room, they're going to open that hatch back up again. One thing they want to look at is just make sure nothing got trapped in the seal. They're going to take a look at the latch mechanism. They also are checking their equipment to make sure that it's try to make sure whether or not it's actually in the capsule or it might be in the measuring equipment that they're holding onto. So you can see right now the latch or the hatch has come open and they are beginning the troubleshooting, taking a look around the seals of the hatch.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that we do have about 10 minutes of margin in the schedule for this troubleshooting.
And 10 minutes before they need to start closing the hatch again?
That is correct. Yeah, 10 minutes till hatch close, and they're taking a look at the CO at this time.
Dragon copies.
I'm only listening to program now. Hey, Marie, this is John. Did you ask me a question? I didn't pick it up.
Yeah, I wanted to first just acknowledge that we heard on the call-outs that they said that they had about 10 minutes of margin in the schedule, so not necessarily going to throw the timeline off track. But is this something, I know that people that are watching this live have got to be wondering, is this something that can cause a scrub, or how significant is this issue right now?
Well, I'd say from a crew safety standpoint, which is what we're always looking out for, if we could not resolve the issue, if we thought we were actually measuring a leak, then that would be a probable scrub issue for today. However, it's premature to say that. They're doing the first round of troubleshooting. And yeah, I also heard the comment, we've got about 10 minutes, but as a reminder, the SpaceX team doesn't actually leave the crew access arm until T-minus 60 minutes. So while we've got standard margin, they may be able to compress other activities since there's still 50 minutes before the crew that you see there in the black pad access uniforms actually has to get out of the area.
Sure. And when we put out the mission timeline ahead of time so folks can follow along, but we understand and we try to impress upon others that these are the kinds of things that can come up. And so this timeline, while it's a guide, it is fluid.
For sure. Thinking back to Demo 2, if I remember correctly, they were also running ahead of schedule in terms of when Bob and Doug got in their seats and strapped in and closed the hatch. So obviously, given an instantaneous launch window for the space station launches, if we didn't have margin, that would be a potential scrub scenario. But like we heard at the call out earlier, we're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. So glad to have that flexibility.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Kate was saying, looking back over my notes, when we did the first Demo 2 launch, it wasn't until about right now in the countdown that the first hatch leak check completed. So by that schedule, which we were ready to support launch right on time until the weather got us, we're still looking good, I think, in the countdown.
Something I want to point out, you heard me mention earlier that the team is working off of tablets following along with the procedures. This is considered the kind of contingency procedure that is written into the procedures. So what we're seeing them go through on screen now, while they are troubleshooting live, we do have a procedure written for this type of contingency. So it's a matter of working through those side steps, essentially.
Nicole, I wonder, did you have any issues that had to be worked through real time on either of your shuttle missions that might have been similar to something like this?
Yeah, I think in both cases, actually, and it's really amazing how the team just comes together and works those procedures like Kate mentioned, where we've tried our best to think about what could go wrong in these different scenarios, and then put those procedures in place to work it. And as a crew inside, unless there's something that we can actively participate in, we're just following along to make sure that everything is picking back up onto the timeline, and then waiting in case there is some switch to throw or communication to have to help with the procedure.
Okay, so again, if you're just joining us, we're at T-minus 1 hour and 47 minutes. We did not hear the call out of hatch closure yet because when they were going through the leak check process, they noticed a pressure drop inside the capsule. So they opened the hatch back up, and as John and I explained, there is some margin in the schedule. And so this is not necessarily a showstopper. It would be premature to speculate about any of that. So far, we are still on track for launch. We're just watching some troubleshooting in real time.
On the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the crew sitting pretty comfortably there in their seats. Something I didn't get to mention earlier is that the seats themselves are custom sized for each astronaut. So not only is the length of the bucket, so basically the length from the tailbone to your shoulders, that is specific for each astronaut, but so is the footrest as well as the armrest. So expecting to fly people of many different heights and wanting to make sure that their positioning is not only operational but comfortable as well. And it seems like everyone's pretty comfy in there.
And we can't overstate how important the job is of this pad closeout team who is doing these leak checks and making sure that that hatch is secure and behaving the way it should be before they leave the pad, because these 4 astronauts are inside a capsule that is going to be fueled in a little over an hour and head off to space. And so it's the job of these people that you see on the left of your screen, in addition to hundreds and thousands more around the country that have been working so hard for months and years to keep this crew safe. Again, this is the first operational or rotation mission of 4 people on Crew Dragon, the first of hopefully many more to come. And so the team has to keep the crew safe.
So I'm now hearing that that closeout team that we saw there were able to check the seals and clean them a little bit. They found a little piece of FOD there in the seal, so that's probably what was causing the hatch to not maintain pressure. So they are about to, I can't quite tell on the screen, but they will be starting to close that.
And what is FOD for people who don't know the acronym?
Foreign object debris.
Okay. So what's an example of what that could be?
It's hard to tell because it depends on the environment, but something as small as a piece of lint to, something like our cell phone or an earring. So that's part of the reason why earlier in the webcast I mentioned that the suit technician team are checking to make sure nobody's wearing unapproved earrings or jewelry. Those are all considered FOD or foreign object debris. But it looks like we're going to be closing that hatch again if it's not already, and reperforming that leak check. Like I mentioned before, we do have contingencies built into our procedures. We are running ahead of schedule, so nothing to speculate causing an abort at this time. But that being said, we will be repressurizing that hatch. And I should say that it's not like we bring it to pressure and check it and it's good. You want to bring it to pressure, allow it to sit there for a couple of minutes and watch whatever the decay is, if any.
Dragon SpaceX for status.
And go ahead for Dragon.
Yeah, the team did find a possible root cause. They are checking cabin environments, and we're getting ready to close the hatch again.
Okay, Dragon copies, and we see pad hatch closed, prep.
Copy.
So just the ground crew core communicating to the crew inside Dragon, giving them a status update, letting them know that potential root cause has been found and that they will be closing that hatch and beginning the leak check once again.
So we heard that they may have identified the root cause, but we haven't heard what that root cause is or what they suspect it is yet. So if we hear that, we will relay that to you, but that is not information that we have heard just yet.
And Dragon SpaceX hatch is closed.
Dragon copies, do the same.
Okay, so we heard hatch is closed, and so we expect a leak check to be forthcoming. Again, we've got the pad closeout team on the left of your screen. closing the Dragon side hatch for the second time, getting ready to do another leak check. And the crew is sitting tight on the right-hand side of the screen.
So we see them performing the mechanical sealing of the hatch. After this is complete, we'll begin the leak check.
We are at T-minus 1 hour and 40 minutes, so with still some margin in the schedule, so this is not necessarily going to throw the rest of the launch timeline off track, but we're just standing by to see if the teams can get this issue resolved. Okay, it sounds like we've got an update from John Innsbrucker in Hawthorne. John, what can you tell us?
Well, Marie, right now we're just inside 100 minutes until the Falcon 9 launch. We're waiting right now to hear the results of the hatch leak check. The second one's going on. As we've mentioned, we think we found a little bit of debris in the seal, and fingers crossed that we're going to do that. We're also waiting to hear the com checks between the Dragon crew and the Falcon 9 launch team, the responsible engineers down in the firing
Dragon
room.
SpaceX for status.
To catch up right now, as I mentioned, we're just inside of 100 minutes.
And go ahead for Dragon.
Okay, the leak check hardware is connected and we're holding pressure now. Still in progress.
Dragon copies, and that's good news.
Yeah, and I will provide some more words on what they identified during my post-ingress brief.
Okay, Dragon copies, and I assume we still have some more time on the leak check.
That's affirmed. Yeah, they're still performing it.
Dragon.
Okay, we heard a little bit of chatter. I'm not sure if y'all picked it up on the webcast, but they talked briefly to the crew, gave them an update similar to one we were just presenting y'all. The good news is that they are farther along in the leak check right now than they got the first time. So again, things are going in the right direction the second time around. They're also looking at the timeline for the crew ingress team that you see there on the left monitor, the SpaceX folks. They will be able to leave a little bit later than T-minus 1 hour and still be able to get clear of the area in plenty of time for us to do propellant loading and the launch. Now, right now on the Falcon 9, we're waiting to do the comm checks with the crew. Our launch engineers for the launch vehicle, they are in firing room 4.
Dragon SpaceX for Falcon 9 comm checks.
And here comes the comm checks. Let's listen in.
And go ahead for Falcon 9 comm check.
Yeah, if you're ready, we are going to kick those off.
Dragon's ready.
Dragon GNC on countdown 1, comm check.
And GNC, this is Dragon on countdown 1. Have you loud and clear.
GNC loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by propulsion.
Dragon prop on countdown 1, comm check.
And prop Dragon on countdown 1. Have you loud and clear.
Prop loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with avionics engineer.
Dragon, avionics on countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics, this is Dragon on countdown 1. I have you loud and clear.
Avionics, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the ground segment engineer.
Dragon, ground segment on countdown 1, comm check.
Ground segment, this is Dragon on countdown 1. We have you loud and clear.
Ground segment, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control, this is Dragon on countdown 1, loud and clear.
Launch control, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer.
Dragon, see you on countdown, comm check.
CE, this is Dragon, Hans. We have you loud and clear on countdown.
CE, loud and clear. This completes the Falcon 9 responsible engineer comm checks. Safe flight.
Correct.
Okay, the good news is we've gotten through the comm checks between the SpaceX team and the Dragon capsule. We're at T-minus 1 hour and 34 minutes. On the Falcon 9, everything continues to look good. Big event really coming up.
Launch escape checks.
Propellant loading as we get inside T-minus 35 minutes.
And go
ahead Dragon
for
side.
pad hatch close checklist.
Okay, Resilience, at this time we're going to commence health check for the launch escape system. You can expect a momentary flight computer state change followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
Dragon copies, and we're monitoring.
Okay, I think we've got a moment now listening to them talk to the crew. On Dragon, other than the side hatch leak check that's been going underway, everything else has been looking good. On the weather front, the good news is that while we've been watching for rain showers in the trajectory of the Falcon 9, we've been watching for heavy rain or thick clouds. Currently, everything does continue to cooperate as we were hoping. The frontal boundary was slowing down and may not reach Kennedy Space Center by the time of launch. And right now that continues to look like it's going to happen. So the local conditions are good. Upper altitude winds, we're looking at the balloons we've been releasing, and those show us that conditions in the upper altitude for stability are good. So we ought to go for launch in about 92 minutes if the weather cooperates, and of course the range is ready to go. So right now, we're going to throw it back to Daryl while we wait for follow-on discussions.
John, thank you very much for that update. And we're here at the Kennedy Space Center, of course, and I can confirm for you, John, weather is looking good right here. Just a thin layer of clouds overhead right here at the launch complex. I'm joined now by Deputy Administrator Jim Morhard for NASA here, and we appreciate him coming to talk a little bit about licensing of these launches. And that's a new thing around here, Jim, because previously that's not something that we heard a lot about. But we understand that this launch is the first commercially licensed launch by the FAA. So explain to me why that is and how that works.
You know, Daryl, it has just been certified for the first time. We license a lot of launches. We had 29 launches that were licensed in 2020. And we're expecting another 56 in 2021. Wow. So it's going exponential. Yeah. And we're excited about that. We've really collaborated with the Federal Aviation Administration, which is part of the Department of Transportation. Steve Dixon is the administrator. He's here right now. He's been with us through the week, working with us, which is just tremendous. There's a great collaboration between the two agencies.
So help the public kind of understand what this means. I think, generally speaking, we all understand that we get aboard a commercial aircraft. That carrier is FAA licensed. So now we're licensing space flight, launches, commercial ones with people on board. So what does that, what does the public take away from that?
You think about it, we have the most complex airspace in the world over the United States. And now we're going to expand it even more into space. And so we're really integrating both our aeronautics, our aircraft that we fly, enjoy every day, with space operations. So we're going to have both those things happening at the same time with human spaceflight. And that's what we're doing here today at the Kennedy Space Center.
That's impressive. And just when you mentioned the airspace in flight, right? Very crowded place. Space just getting started, and as you mentioned, growing. Where do you see this, when you just kind of dream a little bit, where do you see this going one day?
Daryl, you think about it. First off, it's both Federal Aviation Administration, but at NASA also, our number one priority is safety. That's what we're focused on. But in the meantime, we're commercializing low Earth orbit. Right now we have a $350 billion space economy in low Earth orbit.
That's true. That's a big number.
It is a big number.
350 billion.
And people are talking in the future at going to over $1 trillion. And so it is just, we're starting the dawn of a new space age.
And quickly, I think you were telling me that this also increases our ability to do science on the International Space Station, right?
With these 4 great astronauts, and Jim Bridenstine and I met with them yesterday, and they want to fly, and we want to make sure they fly safely. But with that, when they get to the space station, we've got 1 astronaut there right now. It's going to increase our research efforts up there by 300%. And we really believe that demand is going to grow. And the hope is ultimately that we'll have commercial space stations that are built by our space industry in the United States. And so, because there's so much research to be done.
All right, well, very good. Illuminating information about the licensing of spaceports. Appreciate your efforts and all your work in getting these government agencies to work together and talk to each other and come together with some consensus there. That's good stuff.
It's my honor, but this is about safety, and we're going to keep doing it.
Excellent. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Jim. Jim Morhart, Deputy Administrator with NASA, and we are now at T-minus 1 hour and 28 minutes. We'll toss it back to John I in Hawthorne, California. John? Well, maybe not John. We'll go to Marie, right here across the way at KSC.
All right, thanks, Daryl. I've got a brother named John, so I'll answer to either. We are standing by for a post-ingress briefing to the crew.
Dragon SpaceX for side hatch leak check.
And go ahead for the side hatch leak check.
Okay, good news. The leak check has passed, and we saw consistent readings to what we saw on dry dress. So it looks good.
That's great news, SpaceX.
So what you just heard there was the core team briefing the crew, letting them know that the leak check passed, and we're going to be moving along in the timeline here. They're now attaching the final exterior cover there on the side hatch.
Mm-hmm. And they mentioned that the levels that they checked were consistent with dry dress. They were referring to the rehearsal that was conducted Thursday. So just a couple of days ago, they went through this process. It's called the dry dress rehearsal because they do everything except fuel up the rocket and, of course, launch. So when they did the checks that day, obviously things were nominal. The first time they closed the side hatch, they noticed a drop in pressure when they did the leak check. So they opened the hatch back up, discovered some foreign object debris, or what we call FOD, cleared that out. We don't know what exactly it was yet. We might hear about that in the post-ingress briefing. But they closed the hatch back up, did another leak check. Everything looks nominal, and that's what we just heard confirmation of. So that they said that was great news. So it sounds like we're getting back on track now.
So it looked like that closeout team member just took the final closeout photo there, or one of final, and we are moving along. If you look closely on the right-hand side, you might be able to make out some signatures there on the wall of our white room.
And certainly the astronauts sitting inside the Crew Dragon capsule right now appreciate the attention to detail of this pad closeout team.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Marie, it's interesting. I think one of the things we definitely appreciate is that the team that works here with us on these spacecraft absolutely believe that the care and feeding of those spacecraft is their responsibility. And we know that. You can tell as they're working with you and hear them outside the hatch and on the radio as well.
Now, Kate, can you explain what we're seeing now?
It's a little difficult for me to see on the screen. I'm sorry, I can't tell what they're doing.
It is a little off, you know, it's above the frame of the camera view that we can see.
Are there things they have to remove before the seal with the hatch can pull back?
No, there's nothing necessarily attached to the capsule. But I would like to point out, again, we're not only taking into consideration the safety of the crew, but the safety of our team members as well. You can see the straps there. I believe what they're doing is they're basically allowing, so there's a mechanism there on the crew access arm. There's kind of like an airplane door. It doesn't, the metallic pieces don't go anywhere near close to the airplane, but there's a little bit of a seal there to try and control the environment. Again, dealing with humidity and rain and bugs here in Florida, trying to keep all of that out and keep the environment stable and under control there. But yeah, so they are now preparing to move all of that fixturing away, and they are leaning out over towards essentially the side of the rocket. So we have those wires in place for fall protection.
So we should be hearing any time now a post-ingress briefing. That's what we're expecting for the crew inside to kind of get a recap. Okay, so maybe a couple more minutes before we hear that briefing. So we're going to move on temporarily. We've made mention of the first crew to launch in Crew Dragon a little earlier this year. And you may remember them as the Space Dads, as they are affectionately known by the NASA and SpaceX teams who work with them. We watched them lift off from this very spot back in May, ending a 9-year gap in human spaceflight from American soil. And we want to honor the courage of NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley with a look at their historic Demo 2 test flight.
Welcome aboard. Dragon, SpaceX, ComCheck, ground stations.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
On behalf of the entire launch team, thanks for flying the Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
We would like to welcome you aboard Capsule Endeavour. We do have a friend on board with us, Trimmer, the Apatosaurus. I think I was requested to do a backflip. Good night, Megan and Theo. And Karen and Jack.
MD Houston flight. Houston is go for undocking and departure.
Dragon is committed to undock.
SpaceX Dragon on Dragon to ground. We are ready for the systems brief.
Copy. As stated, Dragon's in a healthy state. We are proceeding toward the primary landing site, and your timeline is current.
Visual, 2 drogues out.
300 meters. We are braced for splashdown.
Copy, brace for splashdown. Endeavour, on behalf of the SpaceX and NASA teams, welcome back to planet Earth, and thanks for flying SpaceX.
It's a humbling experience to be a part of what was accomplished.
It's great to see how excited everybody was. We hope it brings a little bit of brightness to a pretty tough 2020.
Wow. I don't know about you guys, but that gives me goosebumps watching that recap.
Yeah, absolutely.
My family and I made a point to drive over here to the East Coast to watch launch from just down the road in Cocoa Beach with our dear friends, the Honeycutts, a name that's familiar to the Kennedy Space Center family. And I'll tell you, it was a real joy to watch Bob and Doug in space and then to have them safely back on the planet with us. And now, special treat, we're going to hear from my dear friends and fellow bugs, AKA the Space Dads themselves. Daryl is standing by to talk with them. Daryl.
That's right, Nicole. We have Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the Space Dads, with us live from Houston, Texas. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on yet another historic day here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Hey, Daryl. How are you? Howdy, Daryl.
Good to see you guys. Good to see you. So you know this moment. You remember it, I'm sure, well, when we came to this moment in time where the capsule, the door was closed. Tell us what you guys were thinking in this moment as we see astronauts, the 4 Crew-1 astronauts getting ready to fly.
Well, you're just thinking about the mission ahead, what you need to do to get through the next hour or two, the timeline. I mean, you know, you don't have a lot of time to think about a lot else. You've kind of wrapped everything up before you walked down and walked out, got to the pad. So we're just going through the checks with the teams, following along and doing the things that we need to do.
You just saw that video that was put together about the whole mission that you guys did. Is there anything that, as you watch that, stands out to you as, you know, that was my favorite moment?
I think for both of us, our favorite moment was after splashdown, when we were able to get the hatch opened and climb out of the vehicle. As you might imagine, as you embark on a test flight, you've got to have a lot of things go very smoothly, and you got to get them all done and get to the final test point that's out there, which was the splashdown and coming home. And so I think there's a little bit of relief, but kind of a big, let our emotions come out, I think, at that point, after being really focused on, you know, the mission at hand all the way up to that point.
And Doug, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with Bob. You know, we invested 5 years with the teams. We went out to Hawthorne almost every week the last 2 years that before we launched. And so, you know, just a culmination of an incredible amount of work by so many people, and to be just a small part of it, and then to complete the mission successfully and have the type of mission that we had, where we were able to do a whole bunch of work on board Space Station, including 4 spacewalks, and then complete the test flight of Crew Dragon and get it ready for this crew. It just, you know, it's indescribable to be a part of that type of an event. And, you know, we're just excited to see what's going to happen, hopefully here in just an hour or two.
Yeah, just an hour and 16 minutes until launch. And so I want to know about a conversation that you guys had. You had some important conversations with this crew. What did you tell them? What advice did you give them?
Well, Doug and I got a chance to sit down with the Crew-1 folks, just like everybody else is these days, over across a video conference soon after we returned. And we tried to give them the benefit of the experiences that we had and some suggestions on some things that might help their mission go a little bit smoother. But I think the biggest message that we passed on to them was that there was a good ship here, and it did a great job getting us to Space Station and back, and they should have confidence in the team as they go off and execute their mission. And so there are things that can be improved after our test flight, and they took a lot of those minor things to heart. But overall, we just really passed on just a lot of confidence in the vehicle, and that goes a long way for a team that's got a lot of things to do as they lead up to the mission that they're about to launch on today, and not a lot of time if you look at how quickly the vehicle got assessed, and changes were made in preparation for this mission. It was just a short couple months ago, I think, at this point, since we came home, and we just really wanted to pass our confidence on to them as they got ready for their mission.
And Commander Hopkins, in fact, said that he appreciated Doug Hurley telling him that when he was commanding the landing, that he was ahead of the spacecraft. Describe what that means and why you think that helped him.
Well, it was a little bit drawn on my experience as a shuttle pilot. My first flight, I just felt like I had to work really hard to keep up with the shuttle as we were re-entering. And, it's a little bit of how you operate on orbit, and then the quickness of the events that you deal with on re-entry. Everything happens pretty fast. So just mentally knowing that was coming, I tried to enforce that with Hopper and just say, hey, look, it's, you're going to be in orbit for a while. Your brain slows down in a sense. But then when re-entry occurs, those events really happen fast. From the time that you separate from the trunk all the way to splashdown happens, it seems like in an instant. So we talked a lot about that, and I just wanted him to be calibrated and be ahead of Dragon as best he could, and then communicate that, obviously, to his crew. He's got a great crew, and they'll be ready for it when they come back in next spring.
And in fact, he said that as a result of that statement, that he studied hard because he knew he had to be ahead of it in order for when these events happen to be ready for them as they come. Bob Behnken, Doug Hurley, astronauts with NASA, and the crew of Demo 1. We appreciate you guys. Demo 2, sorry. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much. And enjoy the launch. And now we're going to send it back to the desk.
All right, thank you, Daryl. It is T-minus 1 hour and 13 minutes, and we understand John I has been listening in, has some more information to pass along on what's been going on, what information the crew has. So, John I, let's hand it over to you in Hawthorne.
Thank you, Marie. It's, as she said, T-minus 1 hour, 13 minutes, 24 seconds. The good news is we are on the timeline. While we were interviewing Bob and Doug, we did hear some discussion with the crew over the SpaceX to Dragon CrewNet. They gave them an update on a couple of issues that we've been working. The one of great interest right now has been the hatch close. They summarized that, as you saw on the monitors, we did reopen the hatch. They found a small piece of FOD, and they also worked on the seal around the hatch. They also did add a little bit of lubricant. They closed the hatch and then reran the 5-minute leak check, and they got a good result. So the crew heard that, and they are supportive, and that issue is now resolved and behind us. The other issue that we've been working that they briefed the crew on is just above the first stage where the propellant tanks in the inner stage meet. You can't see on your monitor there, but there are some weep holes, and what we've seen is some water, I think, from maybe rain that has gotten in there has drained out. And that gave a little bit of discoloration. They wanted to make sure that might not be something else like the RP-1 fuel that's on board the rocket. So they've done some review of data. They see no issues with the fuel system, or in this case, it's the grid fin system that's in proximity in that area. They believe it's water. They briefed the crew, and again, that issue is now closed out. So coming up on just inside T-minus 1 hour and 12 minutes, we've closed up our couple issues, and as we also heard just a couple minutes ago, the closeout team has left the crew access arm, so we're looking good on schedule. So Jesse, everything in the very busy last 20 minutes or so has come together and closed out. What else has been going on?
That is awesome news, John. Thank you for that very detailed update. We're just 1 hour and 11 minutes from launch, and it just keeps getting more and more exciting, especially with those updates coming in. Since arriving at the spacecraft, the crew were helped by our closeout engineers to get into their seats, attach their suits to special umbilicals that provide breathing air and a communication link to Dragon systems. They conducted leak checks, which were successful, and communications checks with the Corps here in Hawthorne, which is the person who will speak to them directly throughout the mission, as well as the launch director in Florida. This is where they are checking their comm path through both ground stations and tracking and data relay satellites that will use to talk to the crew the entire way to the station.
And after those suit checks, we were looking for the leak check on the hatch. So we closed the hatch, and as John and I explained, there were some pressure changes. And so they reopened the hatch, removed what appears to be a piece of foreign object debris or FOD, reclosed the hatch, conducted those leak checks, and everything has come out well. So the closeout team is departing the pad, and weather operators are kicking off the final check on wind speeds at the pad, and that'll be used for the final go, no-go poll for launch. Before we get to that final go, no-go, the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX will do an internal go poll, making sure conditions are right with the Falcon 9, the Dragon, the Crew, the range, and the space station before the final go is given. So let's check back in on Houston for a status on the team supporting the space station on their readiness for launch. Shaniqua?
Thanks, Leah. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. All systems on board the station that required to be healthy for mission are continuing to look good. Before the station team is go for launch, they verify that key systems on board the station are functioning as expected. This includes life support systems like oxygen generation, carbon dioxide removal, and the water recycling system that allows us to reuse about 9% of the water we send to station. We're also ensuring that the computers that allow us to command the station's major subsystems, essentially the station's nervous system, are functioning normally. We also work with our Russian counterparts to ensure both methods of controlling the station's attitude or the direction station is pointing are fully functional. This includes the large U.S. gyroscopes and the thrusters found in the Russian segments. Both systems play a critical role during Dragon docking. Mission Control Houston will be closely monitoring the crew's flight and checking off milestones for most of the journey. Lead NASA Flight Director of Crew-1, Anthony Varia, will lead flight controllers in Houston for launch, and they will all be coming back tomorrow for docking, where we join joint operations with SpaceX. So I'll send it back over to you, Marie at KSC.
All right, thank you, Shaniqua. If you are just now joining us, you picked a great time as we are now at T-minus 8 minutes and 22 seconds until launch. Welcome to coverage for the mission known as Crew-1, NASA and SpaceX's second flight with Crew to the International Space Station. Liftoff time is still holding for 7:27 p.m. Eastern Time, instantaneous launch window, and we are tracking no issues currently with Falcon 9 or Crew Dragon. The range is green and weather is cooperating so far. The last check, it was 50% go. Over the last 3 hours, our crew of Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi donned their SpaceX spacesuits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room. They walked out of that crew quarters building just as every astronaut to fly from this spaceport in Florida has done since Apollo 7. They were then transported to the pad, where our crew entered the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft you see live on your screen atop the Falcon 9 rocket.
Well, this is SpaceX's second time flying astronauts in Crew Dragon. It will also be the first time a private company will fly a crew of 4 people to the space station. If you remember, back in May, we launched NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken to the space station in the historic Demo 2 mission and then brought them safely home in August. Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch, have the crew arm and the launch escape system, and we'll begin fueling Falcon 9. Launch is set for 7:27 p.m. Eastern. This will include a 12-minute flight to orbit and then a 27.5-hour flight to dock with the International Space Station, set for Monday at 11 p.m. Eastern.
So, Nicole, you know, we're coming up on T-minus 1 hour in about 6 minutes. And I know when we were listening to Daryl talk to Bob and Doug, Doug talked about how, you know, there's not a lot of time to think about your emotions. You're focused on the operation and your procedures.
Yeah, your emotions are kind of in you at this point, and you're just trying to make sure you're as best prepared for, you know, what's about to happen.
Sure. And today's flight is the first of 6 planned rotational missions NASA has contracted with SpaceX as part of the agency's Commercial Crew program. The success of the Demo 2 mission allowed for NASA to complete certification for SpaceX to fly astronauts regularly to and from the ISS, bringing back this critical capability of launching from American soil, which we haven't had the ability to do regularly since the retirement of the space shuttle in 2011.
If you've been following along, you've been able to hear that we have been hearing a little bit from crew on board Dragon Resilience, currently strapped into their seats, and they've already gone through all of their communication and suit leak checks. Now, they are able to follow along with all of the action still ahead on the displays that are just above them. There are a couple of touchscreen displays, and that allows them to get insight into all of the Dragon and Falcon 9 systems as we proceed down towards launch. So we're currently at T-minus 1 hour and 5 minutes. Let's check in with John Innsbrucker for another status update on both vehicles. How's it going there, John?
Yeah,
Thank you, Kate. T-minus 1 hour, 5 minutes.
Closeout team to clear the VDA. Once that's complete, we're going to cycle the tank valves to equalize the manifold pressure. This is the same thing we executed yesterday earlier this week during dry jets.
Okay, we copy that, and Jay, your call's coming in a little bit soft, and we're losing you kind of at the end of them.
Copy all on that call, and I'll let you know when we're ready for that tank valve cycling.
Okay, tracking copies, and that was much better. Thank you.
Okay, we've just heard a little bit of the dialogue between the crew inside the Dragon capsule Resilience and the SpaceX Dragon team. Looks like they're going to be cycling a little bit of pressure, giving the crew a heads up. Probably hear some of that noise. Now, as I've mentioned, we're T-minus 1 hour and 4 minutes, counting down. Good news is, as you heard a few minutes ago, we've resolved a couple issues we were working earlier in the count. And while the pace was busy before, now it's going to begin to pick up again. Falcon 9 is into its checkouts of first and second stage propulsion systems and engines. That's in preparation for propellant loading. We're going to hear polls between T-minus 47, T-minus 45 minutes on readiness for propellant loading and then on to launch. And then at T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading will begin. Now on Dragon, we've done our checkouts. Everything is looking good. The astronauts are currently inside Dragon. The hatch is closed, and the leak check is successfully complete. The SpaceX folks have left the access area and I believe are now clear of the blast area. So we'll have 2 major events coming up on Dragon. Between T-minus 45 and T-minus 42 minutes, we're going to see that crew access arm currently alongside Dragon. That's going to retract away from the capsule. And then we'll follow that pretty much immediately by arming of the Dragon launch escape system. That needs to be armed prior to loading propellant onto the Falcon 9. We're launching out of historic pad 39A from the Eastern Range. The range is green and go to support launch, not only here, also the worldwide network of ground stations and the on-orbit tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support Dragon as it heads to orbit. And the good news, weather continues to be acceptable, both at ground level and the upper altitude.
Dragon SpaceX, we are cycling the orbit tank isolation valves to equalize pressure.
Heard the call out from Core. They're cycling the valves to equalize pressure. Now, as a reminder, we have an instantaneous launch window today at 27 minutes, 17 seconds after the hour. So once we get into propellant loading, there's no opportunity to change the T0. Once we get into propellant loading, and actually right now, we're committed. We can't slow down or add some more margin time. We've got to finish up the last 62 minutes. But the good news, Jesse, at just inside T-minus 62 minutes, we are go for launch.
It's great to hear, John. Sounds like everything is going back to normal, is that right? We've got an extensive history now of flying Falcon 9 from the Florida coast, and earlier this year we completed a test run of the mission that we're just an hour away from beginning here today.
And the purpose of that mission was to demonstrate Dragon's capability to safely and reliably fly humans to and from the International Space Station. The success of Demo 2 was a truly exciting moment and paved the way for today's mission.
And Dragon SpaceX valve cycling is complete.
Dragon copy.
And good words from Cord to the crew. But that mission paved the way for where we are today, sending this full crew for a long-duration expedition aboard the International Space Station.
Dragon and Falcon 9 together have years of operational experience, or what we refer to as flight heritage. As Leah mentioned earlier, SpaceX has successfully completed 23 flights of Dragon to and from orbit since 2010, including 22 trips to the International Space Station. Not only have we conducted thousands of hours of testing, we've also enhanced and added a number of safety features to Dragon.
Much of what was learned with Cargo Dragon was leveraged in the design of this vehicle. It's fully autonomous, which means it can basically fly itself, but also features full manual override capabilities in case of emergency. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley tested these capabilities during the Demo 2 mission to the station.
Many of the other enhancements help towards SpaceX's goal of reusability and less refurbishment time between missions. So let's take a closer look at some of these advancements.
Standing at almost 27 feet tall from bottom of the trunk to top of the nose cone, Crew Dragon is composed of two main elements.
SpaceX, just passing T-minus 1 hour. Your go for Section 6. When ready, report go for launch.
Dragon copy. Section 6 is in work.
T-minus 1 hour, we're getting there. But the capsule that the crew is flying on today is designed to hold crew and pressurized cargo, and it also has an unpressurized section known as the trunk.
The nose cone at the top of the capsule protects the docking system and also the guidance navigation control system, or what we call GNC. The nose cone opens for docking and remains attached to the Crew Dragon spacecraft, unlike the previous version of Dragon, and that helps towards our reusability efforts.
Opposite the nose cone is the trunk. It provides attachment points for Falcon 9, the Dragon capsule, and cargo. On the outside, one half of the trunk contains a radiator that rejects heat from the active thermal control system to space using SpaceX's new picotiling technology. The other half contains solar cells used to charge the spacecraft's batteries.
The spacecraft is designed to accommodate up to 7 crew members with modular seats that can be removed and replaced by additional cargo.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon Resilience for 6.4 of 4.100 launch prep. Dragon is go for launch.
Copy, go for launch. Yeah, we're looking good on weather, and you can expect the next call to be the C brief at T-minus 45.
And very exciting. Very exciting. We just got confirmation that Dragon is go for launch. The next call coming up will be from the launch director. So exciting that we are on target for T0 today. Back to what we were talking about, the seats are made of carbon fiber and will be custom sized for any crew members flying on board.
That control panel is centered between the pilot and the commander seats. You can see it a little bit here on the right side of your screen. That consists of 3 touchscreen displays, allowing the crew to operate the vehicle and fly it manually.
And finally, our Super Draco launch escape system is a key safety feature of Crew Dragon, giving the crew the ability to safely escape from the time of launch all the way to orbit.
And we are now T-minus 57 minutes from launch. This day is the beginning of regular crew flights to the space station from U.S. soil, NASA having certified SpaceX for these missions after the successful Demo 2 flight test, which launched in May and splashed down safely in August.
Today's mission will be Crew Dragon's second mission with astronauts aboard and its first long-duration mission to the International Space Station. It's been an awesome countdown so far. Weather is still looking good. We just mission will be Crew Dragon's second mission with astronauts aboard, and its first.
Thank you.
And not only is weather good, but sounds like we're proceeding into propellant load. So we're at T-minus 56 minutes and 37 seconds, and we're just getting closer and closer to that T0. So exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a great countdown today. Of course, a few things we didn't expect, but nonetheless, everything continuing on schedule. So starting with suit up, just over 3 hours ago, the SpaceX team helped the crew put on their suits and conduct initial checkouts before crew walkout. Crew walkout was where Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker, and Soichi Noguchi gave final goodbyes with friends and family gathered outside the operations and checkout building before they began that roughly 20-minute ride to pad 39A.
And what a cool ride that was. What you're seeing on your screen is them getting into their vehicles, waving goodbye. We got some great footage of those Teslas heading down the NASA Causeway before the crew arrived at the pad. And once they got to the pad, they took a minute to take in the sights. There you can see on your screen. They took some pictures and then they headed up into the fixed service structure to begin a process known as crew ingress, where the astronauts entered the vehicle and the SpaceX team performed a series of checks to ensure their suits, the seats, and the vehicle interactions were all functioning properly.
And about 15...
As a reminder, step 55.72 is open for propellant load go, no-go buys.
That's the team continuing to discuss the go, no-go for propellant load. But about 15 minutes ago, the team closed Dragon's hatch with the crew safely inside. So with about 55 minutes to go until Dragon starts breathing fire, things will pick up as we get close to that go, no-go to begin propellant loading and arming the launch escape system.
The crew will pull for readiness, which was completed just about 5 minutes ago. And the Dragon pull for prop loading was just called out not too long ago. Next up at T-minus 45 minutes will be an internal mission control Hawthorne pull, and then the launch director's pull for propellant loading. When we get to about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract and the crew will get the call to close their visors and arm the launch escape system. This is the automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the flight on the ride uphill.
And then once we reach about T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading for Falcon 9 will begin. We've heard some chatter about whether they're go, no go, continuing those polls. And throughout the countdown, we've been getting some pretty incredible views of the astronauts inside Dragon, making their final preparations, as well as some close-up views of the suits. The teams have often described those suits as an extension of the Dragon spacecraft. It's almost a mini spacecraft inside a spacecraft. They're all custom fitted, just as we were discussing earlier. And I think it's very interesting as well. Their seats are custom fitted too. So nobody gets to really choose where they sit today. It's already been decided. And with that, we want to hear a little bit more from
SpaceX for this place.
And go ahead for displays.
I just wanted to check. We did notice that on the left side of the display, it looks like possibly one of the iPads, one of the tablets is still in there. Is there when are you planning on bringing that down?
And we were going to get that right prior to the LES Army.
Copy all.
That's the core speaking with Dragon. The crew also has some tablets they can use to monitor the milestones of the mission. But for right now, we want to hear a little bit more from the KSC side. So, Daryl.
Yeah, thank you very much. Back here at the Kennedy interview desk, and we talk a lot about the astronauts, what they're doing in the preparation for good reason, but they have a lot of work to do. They're going to be doing some science, and joining me now is Dr. Lucy Lowe from the National Institutes of Health with one of the hundreds of experiments that our astronauts are going to be working on. And so one of them, the big one that you're working on and studying, is called tissue chips. So, Lucy, what exactly is a tissue chip?
So, yeah, great question, Daryl, and thanks very much. Great to be here this evening. So a tissue chip, this is an example of a tissue chip. It's a tiny bioengineered device that contains human cells, and it's designed so that it mimics the structure and function of human cells and organs in this tiny little device. And so the idea is that we can use these to understand human physiology, we can use them to model diseases, and we can even use them to test drugs and therapeutics in human systems before they go into humans, for example, in clinical trials. So really they're just models that we can use to model disease and then test therapeutics for safety and efficiency.
taking actual tissue that's been genetically engineered, right, and to see how
Not
it reacts?
necessarily, no. So there's lots of different ways that you can put cells on these chips. You can buy them, but you can also use stem cell technologies to actually create cells from all kinds of different organs and tissues: heart, liver, lungs, skin, brain, bone. Lots and lots of different kinds of tissues can be created from stem cells, and they can be put onto these tissue chips, and then you can model diseases and all sorts on a little chip like this.
Fascinating. We're looking at some video, I believe, of one of these tissue chips being put together. Kind of explain us through what we're seeing.
So what you're seeing there is one of our kidney chips that the Tissue Chips in Space program from the National Institutes of Health and the ISS National Lab has been funding. So this chip here is being seeded here. You're seeing that blue fluid coming through in those little triangles, those little squares are cells that are being placed into the chip. And they're put in there with this pink stuff, this extracellular matrix that keeps them alive and keeps them bubbling away, happily chatting to each other over the course of a few weeks. And so what you're seeing there then with the blue fluid coming through is how we feed those cells during that time that they're up on the space station.
Got to keep them alive.
Exactly. They need all their nutrients, they need all their stuff that keeps them feeling good up there.
So what is the benefit of an experiment like this? What can we glean from this and hopefully in the future?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Daryl. So when astronauts go up to the space station, they have a lot of changes that they see in their bodies that look very similar to certain kinds of disease states or even aging down here on Earth. So when we put cells onto tissue chips and we send them to the space station, we're able to see the same kinds of changes that might happen to the astronauts, but on a very, very short time scale. So for example, diseases that might take months or years or even decades to actually be a clinical problem down here on Earth, can actually be modeled in space in just a couple of weeks. So we can really accelerate the disease modeling using these tissue chips and then see how different drugs and therapies act on them. So we're super excited that some of the Crew-1 folks might be doing some research for us. So thanks very much, guys.
Fascinating, and thank you very much, Dr. Lucy Lowe, for being with us here from the National Institutes of Health. That was a fascinating experiment, and we hope the astronauts get some good work on it so that you can further develop your research. Really
Wonderful. Thank you, Daryl.
All right, very good. And so now we'll toss it back to Hawthorne, California, and John I for the latest at T-minus and 49 minutes and counting.
Thank you, Daryl. T-minus 49 minutes, 7 seconds, continuing to count down. Right now, the launch director, launch team are preparing for the readiness for propellant load and launch pole. The SpaceX launch director has checked with the Dragon mission director and the NASA launch manager. They are ready to proceed. Currently, we're doing an electronic poll of the 7 members of the SpaceX launch team for their go to load propellant and then to press on with launch. Now, the Falcon launch crew is located in Firing Room 4 in the Launch Control Center, adjacent to the historic Vehicle Assembly Building on Kennedy Space Center. Key NASA launch members are also located in the firing room. Now, what we're waiting for right now is we expected about T-minus 47 minutes to hear the results of the poll. While we're waiting to hear that, a couple other status items. The crew is currently on board, and the crew access arm is about to be retracted. You can see the access arm currently in the pre-launch position alongside the Dragon capsule. We'll rotate that out of the way, then we'll arm the launch escape system on Dragon before we go into loading propellant on the Falcon 9. We're launching out of pad 39A, heading northeast out of the eastern range. The range continues to be go for launch. They're monitoring clearance area around the launch pad as well as the air and sea space around the flight corridor. Now, the good news on the weather front, we have been given a new probability of violation of only 20%, or as the optimist would say, 80% chance of good weather. There's a small chance of a shower, but it would have to pop up pretty much right over the pad here at the last minute. They're looking, ground winds are cooperating, upper altitude winds are cooperating. So the weather officer gave us some good news about 10 minutes ago as we got inside of T-minus 1 hour. Now we're coming up on T-minus 47 minutes, and the SpaceX team is finishing up their go, no go polls. We're waiting for a few more people to give the electronic thumbs up so that then the SpaceX launch director can check that item off and then proceed into the remainder of the countdown, which will include propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. So let's listen in for a moment to the countdown net. Will include propellant.
Dragon SpaceX for arm timeline.
And go ahead for the arm timeline.
Yeah, we were just talking here about the tablet and how much time you'll have to put it away. Essentially, as soon as the T-minus 45-minute brief occurs, we're going to begin retracting the arm, and we'd like to be ready to arm the launch escape system immediately, as soon as that's complete.
And Dragon copies. We will go ahead and take care of that now.
Copy all, thank you.
Heard a little bit of dialogue there between Core and the Dragon crew looking at a computer notebook that they're getting ready to put away, letting the crew know what the timeline would be once we finish the go-no-go poll and we give the instructions to the launch team at T-minus 45. Then we'll proceed into retract of the axis arm. You can see it's currently alongside of Dragon, and then we'll go into arming of the escape system, pardon me, years of previous experience. And then finally, we will get into propellant loading. Right now they're getting just the last thumbs up. People have been looking at data that we were gathering just outside of T-minus 1 hour as we were doing final checkouts of the Falcon 9 on the propulsion and engine systems before we got into propellant load.
Poll is complete and the team is ready for crew access on retract, propellant loading, and launch. For non-urgent no-go conditions, please the CE or LD, and the team is ready for crew launch auto sequence and proceed into launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operator shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators advise launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. In the event of a fire alarm at firing 4 today, key operators noted below will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personnel safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly south. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Copy, arming crew arm.
And there you've heard it, just inside 44 minutes, the SpaceX launch director has announced polls are complete. We're go to head into propellant load. The Dragon team is going to begin retract of the crew access arm. So Kate, with that, everything continuing to look good. We're right on time in the countdown.
Thanks for that, John I.
And it looks like the crew access arm has already begun to retract away. Just a beautiful sight.
So this is one of the last major visual milestones that we have before launch. So the crew access arm now moving away, and we are T-minus 43 minutes and 15 seconds from launch. We're standing by as we wait for completion of the crew access retract. Shortly thereafter, we should hear the call out that the launch escape system is armed. And after that, we will hear that F9 prop loading has begun.
And now, earlier this evening, we saw NASA astronauts Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, Shannon Walker at JAXA Astronaut Soichi Noguchi suit up. That was about 3 hours ago. They made the drive out to Launch Complex 39A. Ingressed Crew Dragon about 2 hours ago, and the spacecraft hatch was closed a second time after and then they had a successful leak check. And again, we've just seen the crew access arm retract. And what we heard a few moments ago was that once this process is complete, they are going to go ahead and arm the launch escape system immediately. So we're going to wait to hear the call out that the crew access arm retraction is complete. And then we'll explain a little bit more about this launch escape system, what it is, why it's armed at this point, and why it's so significant. So again, we're at T-minus 41 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. We've just watched the crew access arm retract. That is the suspended walkway that attaches the rotating service structure to
fixed service structure.
The fixed service structure, excuse me, I'm talking shuttle speak, to the Crew Dragon capsule. So we watched the arm retract away. So now we see Crew Dragon.
Crew arm stow is complete.
And we heard confirmation that crew arm movement
Dragon
is complete.
SpaceX, with that call, you are go for Section 7, close visors and arm launch escape system.
Okay, Dragon copies, moving to Section 7.
So their confirmation from Core telling crew that they are allowed to move on. You hear us mention move on to Section 6, Section 7. That's simply making sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of which procedure we are now working toward. So that was just the Core, who is the person that is essentially the single voice communicating to the crew inside.
Dragon, visors are closed. We are arming the launch escape system.
Copy.
And there we heard Commander
Mike Hopkins.
Thank you. Commander Mike Hopkins informed that they are now closing their visors and now commanding the launch escape system to be armed. Now the launch escape system is basically the crew's path to safety in the event of an anomaly, quite simply. If we were to have an abort scenario here on the pad, we have demonstrated the efficiency and success of that system, having done a pad abort test. Previously, we did a launch escape system test mid-flight earlier, I believe it was January of this year. And so basically this is a system
Launch
that could return...
Verified armed.
I believe it was January of this year. And so basically this is a system that could return...
Verified armed.
I believe it was January of this year. And so basically
I only caught
this is
the
a
tail
system
end of that, but it
could
sounded
return-
like the launch escape system is
I believe
armed.
It was January of this year. And
So not only caught the tail end of that, but it sounded like the launch escape
system
is armed.
that all the way from now on the pad until they are in orbit, essentially the crew would be able to escape safely in the event of an anomaly. That's why it is so important that we check the weather all around the world, really. It's not just the weather here at the Cape that we're looking at in order to determine if we're go or no go. It is the weather along that entire escape corridor.
Right. And as Kate was mentioning, again, the launch escape system is armed. That has to happen before the SpaceX teams will proceed with fueling Falcon 9. And so that propellant loading process is set to begin at T-minus 35 minutes, so just a few minutes from now. And what that looks like, Kate, you talked about the tests that were done. You did a pad abort test back in 2015. You did an in-flight abort test at the beginning of this year. And so what that looks like in action, if it were to happen, a pad abort test, or excuse me, a pad abort would be before liftoff at any point from propellant loading, which begins in just under 3 minutes now, until the moment of liftoff. If something were to go wrong and the crew were in danger, Crew Dragon can kind of act as a rocket on top of a rocket and propel itself off of Falcon 9 using its 8 built-in Super Draco thrusters, right? And so the idea is that if that happens, Crew Dragon would splash down off the coast, and then we would have a rescue scenario.
Correct.
And so we've rehearsed that ahead of time. We coordinate very closely, the NASA and SpaceX teams, with the Department of Defense Detachment 3 to prepare for a scenario such as that. We're also prepared for if there were to be a need for a launch escape after the point of liftoff, at any point from liftoff until they reach orbit, about roughly 12 minutes after liftoff. At any point in that sequence, Crew Dragon could still launch itself off of the Falcon 9 rocket. And in that scenario, Crew Dragon would splash down at some other location further downrange, farther away from Florida, obviously. And that's why the weather downrange is just as important as the weather around the pad for liftoff, because they're thinking about how are we going to rescue the crew if we get into a scenario like that.
Exactly. So it's really complicated, but it is a system that we have spent a lot of time designing and testing, and it's definitely something to consider in terms of that weather criteria that we do look at.
And so now at T-minus 36 minutes and 20 seconds, in just over a minute, we should be hearing that Falcon 9 is ready for propellant loading. That'll be with the RP-1, which is rocket-grade kerosene, and then also simultaneously the liquid oxygen loading will begin.
Once we begin loading that liquid oxygen, we'll see plumes of what will appear to be white smoke. It's actually the liquid oxygen vaporizing, turning from liquid form into gas form around the rocket itself in the rather humid Florida air.
And Nicole, I know, we're just about 30 seconds from fueling, but from your perspective, obviously this launch escape capability is not something that the space shuttle had. So from an astronaut's perspective, what's your take on having the ability to abort from the pad or in flight?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. It's what we need to be doing with our spacecraft. And I think anytime you can better ensure the survival of your crew in any situation during, launch and on the way to space, that's what we need to be doing.
Launch auto sequence has started. Propellant load has started.
So we just heard that call that propellant load has started. That means fueling of Falcon 9 has begun. Okay, so we are now at T-minus 34 minutes, 34 seconds and counting. Fueling of Falcon 9 is underway. The launch escape system is armed. And again, today is the first in a series of 6-month missions for NASA's Commercial Crew program. And the Dragon capsule was loaded with propellants about a week and a half ago, just a few miles down the road from us.
Yeah, that's an area that we affectionately refer to as Dragonland.
Yeah. Yep. And in order to fly, Dragon needs fuel and an oxidizer. So for the fuel we use, Kate, you're going to have to help me with these words.
No
I can't pronounce them.
Yeah, so it's monomethylhydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or tetroxide, for also known as NTO, for the oxidizer. These are two propellants, a fuel and an oxidizer, that when they come into contact, they combust instantaneously. So it's a great propellant to use in spaceflight because you don't need an ignition source. So we use those propellants to maneuver Dragon on orbit, and those propellants super power the Draco engines, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would be utilized in the launch escape system in an abort scenario.
And again, we want to be crystal clear. Now that fueling for Falcon 9 has started, that means that the 8 Super Draco engines built into Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule away from the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant if there is any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or on the pad. Now let's go over to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an operations update. John?
Well, we are counting down those final minutes, and everything is still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an on-time launch just under 33 minutes from now. As you heard, Falcon 9 began propellant loading right on time at T-minus 35 minutes. Now, the propellants that feed the Merlin engines that power Falcon 9 are 2 liquids. One liquid is the fuel, the other is an oxidizer. And that fuel is a refined form of kerosene, also referred to as RP-1. Now, our oxidizer is densified liquid oxygen, also called LOX. Densified means it is kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles, and it takes up less volume. This allows for more oxidizer to be loaded into the first and second stages. Now, to ignite the fuel and oxidizer in the Merlin rocket engine, we use an ignition fluid called T-tab. When T-tab comes in contact with oxygen, it ignites, and it gives off a green-colored flame. Once we've got the flame going, we can then add the kerosene fuel into the chamber, and the engine goes to main power. And you might see the green flash just as the second stage engine ignites, following stage separation 2 minutes, 48 seconds into tonight's flight. Now, currently, we're early into propellant loading. The first stage fuel tank is about 10% full, And that first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle. You can see on your screen, you've got the black carbon fiber landing legs, then the white propellant tanks of the first stage, topped off by that black cylinder, the inner stage. Now, liquid oxygen loading is also underway on the first stage. That loading will begin on the second stage, which you can see on your monitor, which is the cylinder, the white cylinder just above that black interstage. Liquid oxygen loading on stage 2 begins at T-minus 16.5 minutes, and we'll continue loading liquid oxygen on both stages until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading into pressure vessels is also underway. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. Now, on board the Dragon spacecraft, the astronauts are monitoring systems while propellant is loaded
Helium load.
into the Falcon 9. And the call out you just heard, ground loading and the crew know that helium loading is going on the vehicle right now. So as I mentioned, the astronauts are listening to this right now. As part of their training in the simulator, we also can give them the playback of sounds that we've recorded in Dragon capsule during recent flights. Plus, they also had a discussion with Bob and Doug after their flight, who related what their flight experience was like earlier this year. Now, out on the Eastern Range, we continue to hear they're green, ready to go. There are no problems, and they are go for launch. And finally, the weather, as I mentioned a little while ago, it's actually improved during the day. We're down to 20% probability of violation. The biggest thing we're watching is just in case in these last half hour, if a rain shower might spring up within a mile or two of the launch pad. But currently, the rain looks like it's holding off. The upper altitude winds are good, and the ground winds are very light. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity just under 3 days from now. But let's turn it over to Jesse and Leah for an overview of events after liftoff.
Thanks, John. For Crew-1, the astronauts' flight to station will take about 27.5 hours, and their journey is much longer, but fairly similar to the trip NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken made earlier this year in Crew Dragon's first mission with humans aboard.
As we await T0 in just about 29 minutes, the ground operations teams are doing a series of system checks to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for launch. You're looking at a live view of our teams at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff. Now, as we wait for the launch clock to hit 0, we wanted to give you an overview of what the ascent portion of the mission will look like.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from historic launch pad 39A and make their ascent.
At about 50 seconds into flight, Falcon's 9 engines will throttle down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. It's worth noting that once we hit max Q, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
Once we are through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our Merlin engines again. And from there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that will happen in rapid succession.
First is MECO, or main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 Merlin N1D engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which is our second event. This is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, with the first stage making its way back to Earth for landing, as the second stage continues on its journey with the third event. SES, or second stage engine start 1, is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew-1 astronauts to orbit.
As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite and then shut down. This helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we will wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
And about 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn, which is a single engine burn, will bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
While Falcon 9 first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. At about 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. It's worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
And about 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or GNC, that will help Dragon autonomously fly until begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or GNC, that will help Dragon autonomously fly until begin.
Dragon will begin its approach phase, undergoing a number of phase reverse as it makes its way to station. All of that will be coming
poner lo que es tu curso, controlar a que tu mouse desaparezca después de 2 segundos. Poner lo que es tu curso, controlar a que tu mouse desaparezca después de 2 segundos.
All right, thank you, Leah. Joining us. We are now at T-minus 25 minutes, 5 seconds and counting from the second astronaut launch from U.S. soil this year, and the first with 4 astronauts aboard Crew Dragon. We want to go over to NASA's Garvey McIntosh. He is standing by in Japan to speak live with the president of JAXA. Garvey, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Marie. Hello, I'm here in Tokyo, Japan. This is Garvey McIntosh. And I'm going to interview JAXA President, Dr. Hiroshi Yamakawa. Dr. Yamakawa, konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Could you tell us about the partnership between JAXA and NASA?
Oh, thank you very much for your question. The U.S. and Japan have built a close relationship in the aerospace field for more than 50 years. And NASA and JAXA have been collaborating in many fields, including earth science, space exploration, human space activities, and aeronautics. Astronaut Noguchi participates in the Crew-1 mission as the first foreign astronaut on board a U.S. commercial spacecraft. This shows a trust relationship between the two countries. We recognize that this mission is an important milestone toward future international space exploration, and we will firmly support him from the ground.
Thank you very much. Could you tell us a little bit more about today's mission and what the mission represents for Noguchi-san?
Well, as the first Japanese astronaut on board 3 different spacecraft, Space Shuttle, Soyuz, and Crew Dragon, I'm sure he will play an outstanding role based on past experiences. Experiments on the ISS are expected to contribute to the advancement of people's lives on Earth. Protein crystal growth experiments in microgravity environment may lead to the development of new medicine. Japanese private companies are also getting to use the experiment module keyboard for the initiatives. Use the experiment module keyboard for the initiatives. We're getting to the experiment module keyboard for the initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question. Looking towards the future, I know recently Japan, along with 7 other countries, including the United States, recently signed the Artemis Japan. Can you tell us a little bit more about the United States recently signed the Artemis Japan along with SpaceX Crew-1? A little bit more about the United States recently signed the Artemis Japan.
Well, last month in October, the Japanese government signed the Artemis Accords, representing the strong partnership as one of the first countries to join in the future international space exploration. Well, I think Japan has expertise in human and robotic space technologies accumulated through our experiences, TV, and Hayabusa 2. And we continue to move forward with technical considerations with NASA and other international partners. In addition to the field of human spaceflight, we will continue and deepen our cooperation with NASA and our international partners in order to explore the new era of space and contribution to our society on Earth. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you for your time this morning, and I'll pass it back to you, Tamira. Thank you, and back.
All right, so we just took a look at numbers across all of our social channels, and there are over 500,000 people tuning into this broadcast right now. And the hashtag #LaunchAmerica is trending at number 20 on Twitter, last time we checked. And Marie, Kate, Nicole, I've got some great photos rolling in, and I have a few that I just have to share right now. So take a look at this first one. We've got this little explorer asking if there's room for one more on the mission.
Aww. I love it.
I know. Let's go to the next one. We've seen so many cute space pups today, and this corgi and its little NASA onesie is just the icing on the cake. I know.
Yes.
Let's go to the next
enough
one.
Space dogs, so.
Okay, let's go next. How incredible is this little patriotic astronaut holding the flag? Now, y'all, this one definitely made me pretty emotional in the first time I saw.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Check out how awesome Kiana looks in her blue flight suit, and, I mean, wishing her hero, Victor Glover, well on his Launch America mission. So you've seen it there, and for those of you at home, thank you for sharing a piece of what this mission means to you with us. And in these final moments, let's check in with Shaniqua at Mission Control in Houston. Shaniqua, what's the latest?
Thanks, Tahira. The space station team here in Houston is focused, and critical systems on the station continue to function normally. The teams have verified the command path from the ground up through the constellation of communication satellites to the station. Everything is nominal, and the station will be ready to receive Dragon tomorrow. NASA Flight Director Anthony Varia has been leading the operations planning between the joint NASA and SpaceX teams for the Crew-1 mission, and with the mission about to begin, he passed along this to the teams. No matter the spacecraft, our jobs remain the same. We will protect the crew, we will protect the vehicle, and we will perform our mission. We remain tough and competent. We operate with resilience. Anthony and team are on console here in Mission Control for launch and will be back tomorrow for docking. A reminder that a launch today will take about 27.5 hours to get to station, docking Monday to the Node 2 forward port scheduled at 10 p.m. Central Time, 4 a.m. GMT. Once Dragon is fully docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist the Dragon and space station astronauts with leak checks as they work to open hatches on both Dragon and inside the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch open to take approximately 2 hours after docking. That's it for us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Florida. Marie?
All right, thank you so much, Shaniqua. We are inside of T-minus 19 minutes until launch. So exciting. We started the day with 50% probability of launch, and now we're up to 80% chance of the weather cooperating. So we are so excited. I know we're going to be turning our attention solely to the pad and going over to Hawthorne to take us through the final count. But one thing that really stuck out to me earlier, and I wanted to mention, when Shannon was talking about her path to becoming an astronaut, she talked about how she was 4 years old when she decided that that's what I want to do. And it really stuck out to me because my 4-year-old daughter is watching and she's dreaming about becoming an astronaut. And it's so special for, I think, especially for little girls, maybe I'm biased, but to be able to have a role model like Shannon and like you, Nicole, because at the time when Shannon was 4 years old, women weren't astronauts. And what an amazing time to be in when little girls have women to look up to, and African-American children have Victor Glover to look up to and see that, they're represented and they can do this too.
Yeah, and I think NASA and the world of space exploration, from the human spaceflight side for sure, has been, over the years just so progressive in understanding how this diversity is so important. And I love thinking about your 4-year-old daughter watching launch tonight and being excited about this. And I'm thankful to be here tonight with you two ladies kind of representing.
I'm super excited. Yeah. I have seen SpaceX launches before. I've seen shuttle launches before, but I've never been this close to the launch pad. And my palms are sweaty with excitement. And it's going to be incredible. Night launches here, they just light up the sky. And so I'm super excited, and I can't even imagine, I think a lot about Victor Glover this evening because, as we said before, this is his first time going to space. He has thousands of hours as a test pilot, like a super impressive resume. And this is his first time going to space. And I'm so excited for him to be part of this mission and get to go to the ISS after a long wait.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful destination. Let me just tell you that the four of them are going to, do amazing work there. And it's been mentioned a couple times before, this partnership that we have that's allowing us to do such incredible things that are just ultimately about improving life on Earth. It's very
Absolutely.
Cool.
And Nicole, I think it's worth mentioning, we didn't talk about this earlier, and I know you are a very humble person and you're focused on the crew that's on the pad right now, but you are the last resident International Space Station crew member to launch from and then land back on U.S. soil. So I think that's significant.
Yeah, as a shuttle crew member, and it's kind of weird to think that was that long ago, but I don't think any crew members goes into it thinking about what first or last it is.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, having worked at Kennedy Space Center for 10 years as a NASA engineer, and to be able to support a mission like that and be here watching this tonight, really historic event, this is the place where we learn that there is a solution to every challenging problem. And in the words of a person I mentioned earlier, Mr. Honeycutt, here's how we can, not why we can't. And that's what we saw go on tonight as well.
Absolutely. And with T-minus 15 minutes, 10 seconds and counting to liftoff, we want to focus in on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We will turn it over to Hawthorne to take us through launch at 7:27 this evening, Eastern Time. John?
Thanks, Marie. As Marie mentioned, everything is looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon. It's going to come at 27 minutes and 17 seconds after the hour, just a little under 15 minutes from now. We began propellant loading on Falcon 9 on time at T-minus 35 minutes. You may have heard earlier the call out, the fuel is completely loaded on the second stage, so the RP-1 kerosene fuel is complete. We also got the start right on time 2 minutes ago of liquid oxygen loading onto the second stage. Now on the first stage that you can see with the white plumes coming off of it, fuel loading is continuing. We're about half complete with fuel load. That'll finish in 8 minutes at T-minus 6. Now densified oxygen, the liquid oxygen, continues to load on the first stage. That'll come down and finish about T-minus 3 minutes. And then as I mentioned, the second stage has just begun liquid oxygen loading just 2.5 minutes ago. That will continue all the way down to T-minus 2 minutes. Now currently, eastern range is go. Everything continues to look good. And the weather, as we said, has continued to cooperate. You can talk about it, you can't do much about it, but tonight it looks like all conditions are good on the weather. And finally, Dragon. The Dragon mission director and team, they are reporting no issues. They've completed the communication checkouts earlier in the countdown. You can see the crew access arm is retracted away. What you have left now is just the strong back alongside of Dragon you can see on your monitors. We have armed the launch escape system. The crew is strapped in and they are ready to go. Their next major event's coming up at T-minus 10 minutes. They're going to get final instructions relayed to them. The crew displays will be configured for launch, and that allows the crew to get insight into how launch is proceeding and provides constant updates on vehicle health to the crew that you can see on the right-hand side of the monitor. The crew will also at that time close their visors in preparation for launch. Now at T-minus 5 minutes, we'll be in terminal count, and Dragon will transition to its internal battery power. We'll hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to 0 and to liftoff. But right now, 12.5 minutes to go, everything looking good. Leah and I will be commenting, but we're going to let you listen into a lot of the discussion and just enjoy the last 12 minutes of the countdown as we head for liftoff again, 27 minutes, 17 seconds after the hour.
That's right, John. It's so exciting. Only 12 minutes, 13 seconds until liftoff now. And just some things that you can look for, especially upon ascent. You'll be hearing some performance calls as we get into the final countdown and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers. They're reporting the trajectory, the speed, the booster performance, and some of the key milestones for Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon on the way uphill. It's about a 9-minute ride to orbit, and a few minutes after that is when we'll see Crew Dragon separate from the second stage. and begin flying free on its own. Some of those other calls you'll hear upon liftoff are number and letter combinations. These mark different abort zones throughout the flight. The first two are 1A and 1B. This signifies they're in the first stage, and that will last until they're up to the very north of North Carolina. The next are 2A through 2E or 2 Echo. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. That lasts from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. There's also a spot we want to avoid in the northern Atlantic, and so you might hear the call Shannon or forward to Shannon. Of course, that's not to be confused with our crew member Shannon Walker today, but that actually refers to Shannon, Ireland. It means they would target off the coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and needed to abort. But that next call out we're listening for to the crew should come up at T-minus 10 minutes that the crew displays. Those 3 panels in front of our astronauts will be configured for launch. Now just 10 minutes and 35 seconds to go until liftoff. Also, as John and I mentioned, that stage 2 fuel load is complete. Stage 1 is at about 90%. Liquid oxygen load on the second stage is about 40%, and on the first stage, about 85%.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. Displays are configured for launch.
Copy, Resilience. We're honored to have you as our crew as we begin operational missions to the ISS. Have an amazing trip and know that we are all for one.
Thanks, Jay. And to all the people at NASA and SpaceX, by working together through these difficult times, you've inspired the nation, the world, and in no small part, the name of this incredible vehicle, Resilience. And now it's time for us to do our part, Crew-1 for all.
Copy all. Thanks, Hopper.
That was the voice of Commander Mike Hopkins confirming those crew displays are configured. And that T-minus 10 minutes was another check for the Falcon 9 launch commit criteria. It was checked by some computers. It was the last check of a wide variety of the Falcon system data to make sure we are go. From here on, we continue to count down until T-minus 7 minutes when the pre-valves open.
T-minus 8 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. As Liam mentioned, the next major event at T-minus 7 minutes, we will open the pre-valves. Currently, the Merlin engines on the first stage are isolated by valves that are between the propellant tanks and with the Merlin engines. We'll open the pre-valves. That'll allow us to begin passing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the inlet of the turbo pumps. That'll chill them down to get them ready for when we bring the pumps up to full speed at T-minus 2 seconds. We want to make sure that the pumps are chilled so that there's not any opportunity for the liquid oxygen to possibly get in contact with a warm pump and turn into gas, something you want to avoid on a turbo pump.
7 minutes and 40 seconds now to liftoff. We're still watching those fuel levels tick up, and in the first stage, we're almost at 100% of that densified kerosene. As we mentioned, second stage is full. First stage fueling should be complete for that RP1 at about T-minus 6 minutes.
Standing by for pre-valve opening.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
And there's the call out. Stage 1 engine chill has started. indicates that we are opening the pre-valves, liquid oxygen now beginning to flow slowly through the turbopumps on the Merlin 1D first stage engines.
Next call out should be in about 30 seconds from now. We'll be looking for stage 1 RP load complete. That's the densified kerosene, that fuel on the first stage, already full on the second stage, and we'll still be loading liquid oxygen up until about 2 minutes prior to liftoff on the second stage. Standing by for that fuel call.
Stage 1 fuel load is complete.
Okay, right on time, and a great view of Dragon sitting on top of the Falcon 9 as we're continuing to load liquid oxygen onto both the first and second stages. The RP1 kerosene fuel is now completely loaded on both stage 1 and stage 2. All continues to go well, just under 6 minutes to launch.
In about 30 seconds, we'll enter terminal count. Dragon's onboard computers will take control of the vehicle. Both fuel on first and second stage is complete, and liquid oxygen loading continues with the second stage at about 80%, first stage at 95%. Something else you might notice is water rushing the pad shortly before liftoff. That's to suppress the sound and keep any sound from imparting a load on Crew Dragon as it prepares to lift off.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count. Dragon is on internal power. Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurizing for strongback retract.
Good confirmation that Dragon is on internal power, and now we'll be looking for a major milestone before we launch today. That'll be the strongback retract. John, you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Leah, if we get a close-up of the Dragon at second stage.
Strongback is retracting.
We've heard the call out, strongback retracting. That's a two-step sequence. First, there are clamp arms around the very top of the second stage. You can see one of them just above the gaseous oxygen vapors coming out of the second stage. Those arms will open up, and then just inside of T-minus 4 minutes, once the arms are released, we'll begin to retract the strongback alongside the vehicle. It'll move back 2 degrees in position, and by about T-minus 3.5 minutes, we ought to be finished with that. The strongback will retract to 45 degrees away from the rocket once we hit T0 as part of the liftoff sequence.
And at T-minus 3 minutes,
Right now, we're waiting for the retract. And there you can see the strongback is beginning to move away from the vehicle. And it looks like we are just about into the required pre-launch position, just a couple degrees away from the Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule. But right now, T-minus 3 minutes, 8 seconds, everything continues to be go on Dragon and Falcon 9.
Currently standing.
Dragon is in terminal count.
And Dragon is in terminal count, and we are standing by to hear that stage 1 liquid oxygen loading is complete. Stage
1 LOX load is complete.
And there we have it, and stage 2 should finish shortly after at about 2 minutes prior to liftoff.
So now the last major event is finish liquid oxygen loading on stage 2. It wraps up at about T-minus 2 minutes. Then at about T-minus a minute and a half, we have to drain back and vent down the liquid line that goes up the strongback alongside the Falcon 9. If you see a large white cloud about midway down around the rocket, that's normal. That's, again, just the gaseous oxygen hitting the warm, moist Florida air.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
And good calls that stage 2 liquid oxygen load is complete. That means we have full fuel on the first and second stages, that densified kerosene, and we're full of the oxidizer. Liquid oxygen on the first and second stage as well. Now just a minute and 20 seconds until liftoff today. And as you can hear those sounds, like Soichi Noguchi said, the vehicle is alive. Coming up in 10 seconds, we'll look to hear that Dragon is in countdown and Falcon 9 is in startup.
Dragon is in countdown. FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and it's now controlling.
50 seconds now until liftoff. That FTS you heard is flight termination.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX, this is Resilient. Roger, go.
Go for launch, and at 37 seconds, the International Space Station flying over Kennedy Space Center.
All for one, Crew-1 for all.
Crew Dragon poised to go catch it. 20 seconds till liftoff.
T-minus 15 seconds. Falcon 9 is configured for flight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
And resilience rises. Not even gravity contains humanity when we explore as one for all.
M1E propulsion is nominal.
That's the word we want to hear. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
As 30 seconds into this historic mission, flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Stage 1 is preparing to throttle down. This is in preparation for max Q, which is maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Stage 1, throttle down.
There's that call out for throttle down.
Power and telemetry continue to be nominal for the vehicle, now traveling at 262 meters per second.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
There's that call out. The Falcon 9 is supersonic, and we will be passing through max Q here shortly, the largest structural load during ascent.
Max Q.
There's that call out. That Falcon has passed through max Q.
1 Bravo.
And we've just entered Stage 1 Bravo abort mode. That's going to take them through the end of the first stage burning just before second stage activates off the coast of North Carolina. T plus 1 minute and 40 seconds into flight. Dragon and Falcon 9 traveling 709 meters per second. That call that MVAC chill is underway, the Merlin vacuum engine.
Now with the call out of MVAC de-chilling, similar to what we saw in the first stage Merlin engines, the second stage engine being prepared for its ignition coming up in just over 30 seconds from now. We're a half a minute away from 3 quick events in rapid succession. We're going to get main engine cut off. The 9 Merlin engines will throttle down and then shut down. We're going to get stage separation.
Stage 1, throttle down.
And then ignition of the second stage engine. We've begun the throttle down in preparation for stage separation.
And we have
2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed.
And you see that stage separation has confirmed. There goes that MVAC engine. Stage 2. Crew-1 is now on their way to the International Space Station. On the right side of your screen, you see stage 2 continuing to burn. Over on the left-hand side is stage 1 preparing for its return to Earth.
Currently on the left side, you can't make out much. It's a couple hours after sunset in Florida, but the grid fins have deployed on the first stage. The first stage is now unpowered, but with the velocity it had, it continues to coast up to an apogee before it begins to descend back into Earth's atmosphere. Now, as we watch, maybe we'll see the lights of Florida or the eastern seaboard in the background, but otherwise there's not going to be much to see. On the right-hand side,
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
You can hear the call out. Trajectory is nominal.
Nominal trajectory.
And we've heard the call out Bermuda. That means Bermuda ground station has the signals from the second stage of the Dragon and Falcon 9.
We're still continuing as stage 2 burns to listen for those abort zones. We are now in 2A through 2E to Echo, taking us up over the northern Atlantic.
Right now you can see the second stage engine glowing with the standard red that we have come to see over all these missions. Indicates everything's looking good. Power on the MVAC-D engine continues to run at 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of outer space.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
And trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear the reply from the crew acknowledging we have a nominal trajectory. Dragon made it to the Falcon 9 second stage, heading into the low Earth orbit, where Dragon will then separate and begin its trip the rest of the way to the space station.
We'll be looking for SECO, second stage engine cutoff, coming up at 8 minutes and 48 seconds after launch today, so about 3.5 minutes from now. Dragon and Falcon 9, second stage, currently flying 2,979 meters per second.
Now, currently, the first stage has begun its descent. It is through apogee. It's beginning to come back down, where it... coming up in another couple of minutes, we will have the entry burn, where we begin to slow down the first stage.
SpaceX trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another call out, another nominal trajectory, just what we love to hear.
That voice you're hearing on board Dragon, that's Commander Mike Hopkins, speaking for our 4-person crew as they continue their journey, now 6 minutes and 12 seconds after liftoff. Trajectory still nominal.
And Leah, you can see on the indicator altitude, 201 kilometers. We're now beginning to essentially level out and pick up velocity to get us into low Earth orbit. We're a little under 1 minute from the ignition for the entry burn on first stage.
And we're about 2 minutes away.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Great news, now 7 minutes after launch. Second stage engine continues to burn, everything looking good. And we'll see that continue to burn for another 1 minute in about 38 seconds.
Right now on stage 2, the crew's getting about a little more than 2.5 G's of acceleration. First stage preparing to ignite for the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
And we've got ignition of the entry burn, center engine, followed by the other 2 restart engines. First stage now getting ready to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. This is about a 29-second burn, and it's designed to slow the vehicle way down. We're going to shed about 70% of the velocity of that dropping first stage by the time this landing burn completes. I should say by the time the entry burn completes. which is now over. First stage on target for the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Meanwhile, we're watching second stage getting close to getting into orbit.
That's right. We've got about 30 seconds more.
Internal guidance.
And now just about 20 seconds more of stage 2 continuing to burn until we see second stage engine cutoff, or SECO. We'll coast for a few minutes afterward to allow the rates in motion to...
Roger, Shannon.
There's that call for Shannon. That's Shannon, Ireland, an abort zone, but it looks like we continue smoothly to orbit today.
MVAC shutdown.
And we've got shutdown of the second stage engine on time.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Launch escape system is disarmed.
And SpaceX copies.
And Leah, the words we like to hear, a nominal orbit insertion.
That's right, John. Nominal orbit insertion, as we mentioned, stage 2. Oh, looks like some action on stage 1. And I believe we've had a touchdown on the drone ship.
We've got stage 1 has touched down on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. But now the more important news, second stage is in orbit, right where we want, right on time. And we're getting ready for our next major activity, which will be Dragon spacecraft separation. Now, currently on the second stage, we are essentially venting pressure, purging the engine out, making sure everything is quiet in preparation.
Take a look. That's inside Crew Dragon right now. Our Crew-1 crew now coasting in low Earth orbit, still attached to that second stage. In just a couple of minutes, we should see that second stage separate, and Crew Dragon will be flying free.
Leah, the mission timer shows 90 seconds to Dragon separation.
Currently, Dragon is flying at 27,000 kilometers an hour. And we're T plus 11 minutes since liftoff today, waiting on that second stage separation. But as you can see, our astronauts from left to right, Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, and Soichi Noguchi, now on their way to the International Space Station. First trip to space for Victor Glover.
Acquisition of signal in Newfoundland.
And that call out, acquisition of signal in Newfoundland. That means the Newfoundland ground station is now receiving telemetry from Dragon. This view inside Mission Control Hawthorne. Teams continuing to monitor the vehicle, now traveling at almost 27,000 kilometers an hour.
Ten seconds to Dragon separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
And separation confirmed. You can see that second stage departing. Crew Dragon leaving it behind.
Separation confirmed.
Now 12 minutes, 25 seconds into today's flight. Our next thing we'll be looking for is nose cone deploy. Our hooks will start to open on the nose cone and reveal those forward thrusters underneath. 13 minutes into today's mission, the view on the right-hand side of your screen coming from Crew Dragon. We had that short look at the second stage as it departed. That second stage will burn up upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon SpaceX, we see nominal service section Draco checkouts and the humidifier activation.
And SpaceX, this is Dragon. We copy all and we see the same.
Confirmation from teams on the ground and the crew. You can see them monitoring those 3 display panels, monitoring their journey to the International Space Station and where they are in the world right now, or over the world, I should say.
Well, we're in 14 minutes, 25 seconds since it was a great liftoff. Everything happened. We had a nominal insertion into low Earth orbit. You saw Dragon separate. We got the Draco checkouts were good. And right now we're hearing the nose cone hooks are opening up. Everything is happening right per the procedure. And we've got Crew-1 successfully on orbit. So with that, let's head over to our counterparts at Kennedy Space Center. Marie, how was that launch for you all there on the ground?
Oh my gosh, John, it just took our breath away. I mean, we could just turn right around in our seats and watch. We got up away from the desk to get a better look. And then we actually could see the booster coming back down.
Yeah, that was outstanding. Outstanding. And I don't even know what to say. High five. We're like high-fiving through the shield here.
High five. My husband texted me a picture of my daughter watching liftoff. It was just, I'm emotional. Seeing that. And went on the first attempt. How often does that happen in human space flight?
As it should.
I'm very happy. It has been a long day, but just to be able to stand there and actually feel the rocket pounding the air around you was just incredible. And then looking at the light too long, I couldn't see the MVAC ignition, so I still have spots in my eyes.
And then the views inside the capsule too, with the 4 of them, looking kind of mellow, but you could see Victor's kind of letting his arms do a little bit of the floaty thing. I bet he cannot wait to get out of his seat.
Well, he's going to get a chance to here shortly. So he's officially on his way on his first space flight.
So
Incredible.
Victor, Mike, Shannon, and Soichi are now on course to arrive at the International Space Station just tomorrow, Monday, November 16th, around 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to stay